Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for attending our last meeting of the Transport Regeneration and Climate Policy Committee of 2025. The meeting today is open to the public, and it's good to see that we have many members of the public today who are joining us in the room, and also some people who are joining us remotely as well. Now, there are no items that contain exempt information, and the meeting is webcast, and a recording is available to people to view later, again, at the Council's website. Now, we've received two petitions, two remit questions, one agenda-related question, and two statements from members of the public for today's meeting, which we will hear later. Please, of course, can I request that mobile phones and other such equipment is switched to silent so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. Now, there's no fire test that's planned for today, but if there is an emergency evacuation, then please do take instruction from the Town Hall staff, and the assembly point is in Tudor Square. I'm just going to ask each committee member in turn to introduce themselves, and then I'm going to ask officers who are in a seated position at the moment to also introduce themselves. Throughout the course of the meeting, you'll also hear from a number of other officers, and they will introduce themselves as they come up and present their specific item. I'm Councillor Ben Miskell. I am chair of this policy committee and a councillor for Park and Arbourthorne Ward, and I'll move to Craig.
Hi, my name's Craig Gamble-Pugh. I'm a councillor for East Ecclesfield Ward.
Hello, I'm Councillor Janet Riddler, councillor for Stocksbridge and Upper Don.
Hello, I'm Councillor Alexi Diamond. I'm a councillor in Gleadless Valley and also deputy chair of this committee.
Hello, I'm Ruth Mercereau. I'm councillor for City Ward.
Good afternoon, I'm Richard Shaw. I'm Lib Dem councillor for Beechif and Greenhill Ward.
Good afternoon, I'm Tim Huggan, councillor for Crooks and Crossbow Ward.
Good afternoon, Councillor Ian Horner. I'm councillor for Bayton Ward and Lib Dem Group Spokes on this committee.
Thank you very much, Ian. And I'll just turn to officers who are in a seated position to my left, starting with John.
John Shortland, the Assistant Director for Transport.
Sean McLean, Director of Regeneration and Development.
I'm Will Stewart, Director of Investment, Climate Change and Planning.
I'm Robert Parkin, Assistant Director for Legal Services.
Amanda Clayton, Democratic Services.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Let's make a start with our agenda today. So item 1 is an opportunity for us to receive any apologies for absence. Amanda, have we received any?
Yes, from Councillor John Wright, Chair.
Thank you very much, Amanda. That therefore moves us to item 2, which is an opportunity to consider whether there be any need for an exclusion of the public or press. Amanda, is that a requirement today?
No, there's nothing today.
Thank you very much, Amanda. That moves us on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. Now, can I ask any members who wish to declare an interest in any item of the business today to please do raise your hand. And of course, it would be really helpful if you could refer to the item of business and state whether it's a pecuniary or a personal interest, as well as outlining the reason for the declaration. Do I see any colleagues who wish to indicate to say that they'd like to make a declaration of interest? I don't see anyone indicating, so therefore we'll move to the next item, which is item 4 on our agenda. This is minutes of previous meeting. So can I ask members to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the Transport Regen and Climate Policy Committee meeting that took place some time ago now on the 22nd of October of this year. And just for your awareness, they're on pages 11 to 18 of the agenda pack. Colleagues, are we content with approving those minutes? I can see that colleagues are nodding and I can see no dissent, so therefore we will approve those minutes as a true and accurate record. Also, thank you very much, Amanda and Democratic Services, for putting them together. That makes us move to item number 5, which is an important part of our agenda. It's public questions and petitions. Now, there's a maximum time allocation in line with our constitution of 30 minutes for this particular item of business. and I'm going to take our two petitions first. We have received two petitions, and our first is from Rita Neves, and it's with regard to Legit Lane. Rita, if you feel comfortable, if you could come over to the microphone just in front of us here and present the petition. But I'm told, I think by Amanda, that Rita may not be here, but Rita has asked whether Amanda can read the petition. Thank you, Amanda.
Yes, Chair, Rita's unwell, unfortunately. I'm not a Sheffield native, so legit, did you say that the pronunciation is?
I think so, but let me just ask Councillor Huggin, actually.
Legit, okay.
Legit, yes.
Stand corrected. She sent a statement that reads as follows. Thank you for allowing this petition to be heard today. I'm speaking on behalf of concerned parents and residents of the Crooks community regarding the junction of Legit Lane and Tapton Crescent Road. The number of signatures on this petition reflects how strongly local people feel that this situation can no longer be ignored. Every single day, large groups of school children cross this junction, particularly during the busy periods before and after school. This is already a heavy traffic route and vehicles regularly pass through at speed. At peak times, children and parents are crossing while traffic continues to flow uninterrupted. There is no pedestrian crossing, no warning signage and no speed calming measures. Visibility is made even worse by cars parked along one side of the road, meaning pedestrians, including young children, must step partway into the carriageway just to see whether it is safe to cross. This is not a theoretical risk, it is a daily reality for families. Many of us feel that the current circumstances make this an accident waiting to happen. Parents are having to make impossible judgment calls every morning and afternoon simply to get their children to and from school safely. We appreciate that the Council must balance many competing priorities. However, the strength of this petition shows a clear and united request from the local population for action. We are asking the Council not just to note our concerns, but to take them seriously in light of the volume of children affected and the predictable nature of the risk. We urge the Council to take the current conditions into account and to commit to meaningful safety improvements before a serious incident forces action rather than choice. Thank you for your time and for considering the voices of our community.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for reading that on behalf of Rita and, of course, residents. So in response to the petition, we really do want to thank Rita and neighbours for bringing the petition, because actually it's very important and obviously very serious. Now, as a committee, we took a decision back in March 2024 to commit to Vision Zero, and that set us on a course to eliminate all fatalities and serious injuries on Sheffield's roads. Now, none of us in this committee underestimate just how challenging that ambition is, as we deal with a legacy of street design that over the past century hasn't been created in a modern, people-friendly way. I guess as a result of that commitment, we're going to ask officers as a committee to undertake an assessment of the specific site and investigate the matters that you are raising and then prepare a comprehensive response. And I'd expect that that response will be available to the committee and we'll, of course, share with you before the next meeting of this committee on the 28th of January. I also wanted to share with you that I recently did go on a site visit to the specific location that you mentioned. I think it was following an invitation from some of your local councillors. I was really impressed, I guess also heartened to witness that there were hundreds of children who were doggedly walking to school and crossing Legit Lane in very large groups and doing so really sensibly. But their safety shouldn't be something that they have to fight for or to make contingencies for. I know, for example, that your local councillors, Councillor Minesh Perek and Councillor Ruth Milson, have raised some of those concerns with me, and having spoken also with Councillor Hooken, who's a member of this committee, I know that he also shares concerns about this particular issue, and no doubt all of your councillors wholeheartedly support your suggested course of action. So really do want to thank you very much for raising this important issue, and we'll look forward to getting back to you on it in the due course in the new year. And we will therefore move on to the next petition that's coming before us. Now, as I understand it, that's from Jane Mason, and it's with regards to Burley Lane. Now, as I understand it, Amanda, I don't think that Jane is here today, So therefore, what we'll be doing is we'll make sure that the committee does have a copy of that petition, which is, of course, incredibly important, and Jane and neighbours will receive a full and comprehensive response from us on behalf of the committee as well. We've also received, apologies, Councillor Horner.
Yeah, apologies, Chair. I just quickly wanted to raise in relation to this petition. First of all, my thanks to John Shortland, because it's taken a month to get Simca to answer a question, but not only thanks to John's persistence in chasing it, about the state of the concrete roadway between the tram tracks. Now, I think it's relevant to this petition because the state of the road in that area is particularly bad, and I think that creates a further hazard. What has happened is Volker have been brought in to replace the rails, but they have not tackled the legacy issues from Stagecoach's ownership of the state of the concrete between the tracks. That concrete's been filled with tarmac from time to time. It's now got significant holes in it, and that just creates an extra hazard in relation to areas like this. So I just wanted to flag that up with people, and again, my thanks to John for pursuing it. But it's clear to me at the moment, from the answer they've given, Simca are aware of it, but they don't appear to have any strategy to actually do anything about it.
Thank you very much for making us aware of that, Councillor Horner, and of course it's really important that you do put that on record and have done so now as well. Of course, we'll make sure that we pick that up as part of our knowledge briefings that happen regularly over the coming weeks as well, but it sounds very much like you're making that case on behalf of residents, so thank you very much. So that therefore pushes us on to the next set of questions that we've received. Now, these are questions related to the remit of this committee, and we have got two of those questions, one from Anton and another from Charles. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Anton to appear on screen, I think. He's dialing in from home, and I think he's going to read out a supplementary question. Of course, for those people who are watching from home, you'll be able to find the original question that Anton submitted on the council's website as well. So Anton, hopefully you can hear us, and we can see you on the screen.
I'm Anthony Stushkin, I'm a resident of Hillsborough. My question related to electric vehicle pavement channels grants, and the supplementary question is, can you please confirm when the eligibility criteria and trial dates will be announced, and how the public consultation is going to go? Thank you.
Well, firstly, Anton, although it isn't related to your supplementary question, I do want to thank you for the work that you continue to do in supporting the Ukrainian community here in Sheffield. I think your presence today really does reflect how much our Ukrainian friends, including people like you from places like Mariupol, how much you contribute and enrich the civic life of our city. When we come to discuss our work programme, the discussion later, as I understand it, it's likely that members of the committee may wish to consider adding cross-payment charging and a project about that on our work stream. And as a member of the committee, I'd support that, but as a chair, I can't prejudge the wishes of the committee on that particular item. Now, if the committee does decide to pursue this further, further work could be required by our transport and highways teams to develop a scheme. Now, I do know, however, that cross-pavement charging is already available in lots of areas across the UK, like Nottinghamshire, Enfield, Kingston, Richmond, Cornwall, Northumberland, Hartlepool, and that trials are also confirmed or underway in places like Stirling, Sunderland, Bolton, Manchester, Milton Keynes, Newport, Bedford, and many other locations. So throughout the course of our meeting today, we may well have some further answers for you, but hopefully we'll be able to continue the dialogue about this particular important issue when it comes to cross-pavement charging. So thank you very much for bringing your question today. Our next...
Thank you.
Thank you, Anton. Our next question comes from Charles Carey, and as I understand it, Charles is in the audience today. Charles, if you'd feel comfortable to do so, if you could come to the microphone. Of course, for anyone who's watching from home, Charles's question has to be read alongside his original question that is on the council's website. This is a supplementary question. So thank you very much, Charles, for coming in today.
Good afternoon, committee. I confess I do not think you have answered my original question, which was namely the risk of stranded assets and whether Sheffield plans to do anything different in their proposed e-bike hire scheme from other cities, given their not particularly successful performance. But in your reply, you refer to the Sheffield Transport Vision of March 2024, which states, "We will explore options to deliver cycle hire schemes." In addition, your committee minutes of 2 months ago, October 2025, state you will seek public and stakeholder engagement while developing the OBC and FBC. Now, I understand that it is normal for an OBC, an outline business case, to be developed before issuing a tender. And while an e-bike hire scheme appears to have positive cross-party committee support, why has there been no OBC publication and engagement, this being a substantial, as I understand it, £2 million project, in contrast to lesser project spends where you frequently document decisions and alternatives? Have I missed something?
I don't think you've missed anything, and thank you for giving us advance notice of that, Charles. It's really appreciated. I think it's important to thank you on behalf of the committee for the supplementary question, and of course I think the engagement that you have had via email with other members of the committee as well as myself and no doubt council officers on this issue. I guess as you've noted in your question and supplementary question, that e-bike hire scheme really did form part of our Sheffield Transport Vision, which we as a committee formally adopted in 2024, and we are really excited to be bringing it forward for launch next year. I guess in direct response to your question, the outline business case was approved at the meeting of the Finance and Performance Policy Committee that was held earlier this week on the 15th of December 2025. You can find a copy of those papers on the council's website. So thanks very much for joining our meeting today, and no doubt we'll continue our conversations via email or in person as well. So thank you very much. We also have received one agenda question from Sam Wakelin, who unfortunately is not able to attend our meeting today, but I think we will give Sam a written response to that. No, actually, Amanda's telling me that she will read out Sam's question. Sam.
Thank you, Chair. He did ask for his question to be read out in the meeting. He writes, I am pleased to see the city centre access and movement plan is aiming to provide accessible and safe streets. I welcome the hard work of network planning for each mode and inclusively involving the public, but to claim it as a response to the climate emergency is dangerously misleading. It appears designed to fail on this and instead accepts terrible violence. SCC had independent scientific advice over 5 years ago, which made clear that to meet our aims of a relatively safe climate, motor traffic needs to be urgently reduced, with car use citywide coming down by over 66% by 2030. The city centre should be the easiest place to start on this, but this plan aims for a fraction of this level over a much longer timescale. It also includes contradictory plans like Shalesmoor Gateway, which aim to increase traffic by 20%. By planning no attempt to meet our commitments of either zero carbon by 2030 or our fair share towards anything close to 1.5 degrees globally, this council will be choosing to destroy the happiness, health and lives of people both in Sheffield and around the world. Can you accept this? Is this the price we must pay to protect the profits of the rich? Or will you now take the many useful building blocks in this plan to reshape proposals? Excuse me, lost my place. Jump to page. For the deeper and more timely change we need to meet the reality of what we face.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for reading out that particular question from Mr. Wakelin. As we said before, we'll make sure that Mr. Wakelin is provided with a full and comprehensive written response to that question. We've also received 3 statements from Viv Lockwood on behalf of the Banner Cross Neighbourhood Group, from John Armitage from Cycle Sheffield, and as I understand it, Becky Hammond will be attending on their behalf, and also from Hedley Skelton from Living Streets, Southwest Sheffield. If they would feel comfortable to do so, can I ask that all three of them come and sit in front of our microphones and join us at the committee tables? So, we have, so for members of the committee and their awareness, as well as people who are joining us online at home, we've got three people in front of us, Viv, John and Headley, who are talking from a different perspective on the same topic. We're really keen as a committee to hear more of their viewpoints. As I understand it, we're not making a formal decision on this particular matter today, but it may well be subject to further discussions at our future meeting, I think in early January, so it does really help committee members in informing a viewpoint. But did I see Councillor Merzero with a hand up wishing to indicate to speak?
Yes, just to say that we haven't, well, I haven't seen the statement from Headley Skelton. It wasn't included in the papers. I've seen the statement from Viv Lockwood and John Armitage, but there doesn't appear to be anything included in the papers from Headley Skelton.
Apologies, Councillor Merzero. I had not also seen the statement from Headley. As I understand it, I think Headley did send an email and he'd done everything that he could have done to reach us, but that somehow was not placed in the agenda pack. So apologies, that'll be the first opportunity that we get to hear what Headley's got to say today. But of course, we'll make sure that it's reflected in the minutes and that it's circulated to committee members. And apologies on behalf of the Council, Headley, that that's not been included. And very right to point that out, Councillor Merzero. I think if it is possible, we'll hear from Viv first, and then we'll hear from John, and then finally we'll also hear from Headley, and then we'll give a response on behalf of the organisation as well. So, Viv, if you feel confident to do so, if you can press the microphone when you're ready to speak.
Thank you, Chair. The Bannercross Neighbourhood Group has sent copies of our report regarding Hunter's Bar to all TR&CP committee members. Our analysis finds that most accidents are happening during the hours of darkness and many when the weather is poor. It contains recommendations drawn from our interrogation of accident data and on-site observation and suggests what remedial action should be taken, to include 1. Significantly to enhance the lighting at the roundabout to something approaching daylight, and 2. To improve the road surface for all weather suitability, especially for rain and snow. We further recommend that the Transport Department does more work on the consequences of its proposals before putting them out to the public, hopefully to evade making recommendations such as to reduce the approaches to the roundabout on Brocco Bank and Junction Road to one lane. It was obvious that this would have created huge congestion, but its initial inclusion, as with the Millhouses Lane proposal, has served only to raise despair and anger amongst residents. As a matter of good practice, the department should evaluate and openly publish the consequences for any and all its proposed changes to the road network before releasing them into the public domain.
Thank you very much, Viv, for reading out that statement on behalf of the Bannercross Neighbourhood Group. The next person that we have is Becky Hammond, speaking on behalf of Cycle Sheffield in her statement.
Thank you. Cycle Sheffield is an organisation with about 2,500 members, which I think means we represent about 1 in every 200 of Sheffield's residents. Cycle Sheffield supports the proposed changes to Hunter's Bar roundabout as they've been published so far. And we would wish to remind the committee and the community that the A625 scheme is intended to improve safety for all road users. We've seen comments made by representatives of the Bannercross Neighbourhood Group which are critical of the proposed changes to the roundabout. They seem to appreciate how road layout influences driver behaviour and contributes to crashes, which we do agree with, unlike their opinion that the colour of cyclists' gloves is a relevant safety concern. Due to its location and the road network, the roundabout is a bottleneck for drivers, cyclists and pedestrians travelling in different directions. The Council's walking, wheeling and cycling investment plan will lead to more pedestrians and cyclists using it. The West Bar roundabout redesign is an example of how a design with fewer lanes has reduced collisions whilst not increasing congestion. 3 cyclists have suffered life-altering injuries in 5 years. A further 5 have reported less serious incidents to the police. There will be more that haven't been reported. The current road makes it difficult for drivers to see other road users. No cyclist enters that roundabout thinking that they are invincible. And if at least 3 life-altering injuries in 5 years is not enough to justify safety improvements, then what is?
Thank you very much, Becky, for reading out that statement on behalf of Cycle Sheffield. And our final statement from a member of the public today is Hedley Skelton on behalf of Living Street South West. Hedley, thank you very much for coming in, and apologies that your statement was not distributed to members of the committee in advance.
Thank you, Ben. Good afternoon, everybody. So Living Streets South West Sheffield supports the planned A625 changes at Hunters Bar roundabout to improve safety for pedestrians, cyclists and wheelers. We reject claims that this critical active travel corridor near a major park, schools and essential amenities cannot accommodate a shift away from prioritising motor vehicle traffic. The current 2-lane setup tempts drivers into reckless overtaking, creating a deadly blind spot that places children perilously close to speeding cars. The Council is right to eliminate this life-altering threat to both vulnerable road users and drivers. Safety is a fundamental right, and our survey found a shocking 77% of pedestrians have experienced a near miss in this area, indicating the true danger is underreported by official crash statistics. 20 casualties in 10 years, 6 of which were serious, are not an acceptable number to dismiss. We question the Banner Cross neighbourhood group's evidence asserting that devoting 25% of junction time to vulnerable road users is unreasonable in a high-density area. A minor increase in journey times is a necessary trade-off for improving safety and aligns with contemporary policy. Watering down these modest proposals would signal a failure of political leadership and undermine Sheffield City Council's commitment to safer, more equitable active travel. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Hedley, for reading that statement out on behalf of Living Street South West. So we heard from 3 different organisations, 3 different residents of our city, presenting on behalf of 3 different organisations. So on behalf of the committee today, I do want to thank all of those 3 groups for attending and their engagement with committee members. As a council, we do remain very committed to delivering our transport vision for Sheffield, which many of you have noted in your statements. Now, that document was approved by our committee in March 2024, and it's an important part of what we do here. That vision sets out our clear priorities to speed up public transport journeys, to reduce to 0 the number of people killed or seriously injured on our roads in Sheffield, to tackle congestion, and to create safer streets for everyone, and to make it more of an attractive place for people to walk, wheel and cycle. I guess all of those representations today show how people have strong views about all of those priorities. Now, the area around Hunters Bar roundabout has received significant government funding to improve road safety, and we're all committed to delivering on that. Now, it's true that traffic modelling of the current proposals at this location have indicated an increase in queue lengths based upon current levels of vehicle use. We're therefore exploring whether alternative measures could achieve similar collision reduction benefits within the available budget. At this stage, the transport team is actively working on this, but there is nothing further to report at this stage. It should be noted, however, that this is a road safety scheme, first and foremost, and the council is committed across the city to achieving our Vision Zero targets on Sheffield's streets. We're also committed to empowering people with even greater choice about how they travel, including improving public transport, which is crucial to reducing congestion. That said, we are committed to continuing this dialogue. I personally enjoyed attending Cycle Sheffield's AGM recently, and I've met with the Banner Cross neighbourhood group before. And I know that all members of this committee will continue to meet and engage with all of the groups that do have a particular interest and share a passion for this particular topic. So thank you very much for coming today. Thank you very much for bringing your points. Thank you very much for engaging with residents, but also thank you very much for engaging with your members. I think this shows how our committee system does work and how we can gather together different people's views before the City Council does make decisions about things. So thank you. That therefore takes us to the end of item 5, which was an opportunity for public questions and petitions, a really important part of our agenda, and does move us on to item 6, which is an opportunity for member questions. There are no questions that have been received from members today. However, of course, questions are asked and answers are given as part of knowledge briefings and other work that happens outside of this place formally. Item 7 is an opportunity for the committee to consider and approve, if it's so minded, the work programme. Of course, it is a moving document and is adjusted from time to time at different meetings. For members of the public who might be following from home and those committee members, it's on page 21 of the agenda pack, and the presenting officer will be Amanda, who puts it together for us. Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. There are 2 changes since the publication of the work programme. Those are to our January meeting. The tram vision will now be done via a knowledge briefing to members, and the local area energy plan has been moved back to the summer of 2026. I'd like to also draw your attention to the referral from the council meeting on the 5th of November, a motion entitled Hope Beyond Austerity. There were a couple of items in that that were referred to this committee, and I believe Will is going to run us through our proposed actions.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Will.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks, Amanda. Yes, just to give a bit of background to this, at the full council meeting on the 5th of November, a motion was agreed that requires a response from this committee. So the main thrust of that motion was, number 1, around harnessing the large number of rooftops on council homes and other buildings in the city for solar power. And the second was around maximising opportunities for nature recovery through building a pipeline of biodiversity net gain projects in underfunded green spaces. I'd like to make committee members aware, and you'll all probably be aware anyway, that these themes are actually included within existing work programmes, some of which are being progressed through this committee and some of which are being progressed through other committees in the council, namely Parks and Countryside. So, for example, on solar power, we are delivering a series of solar projects on primary schools in the city, both through our local renewable energy fund programme and also as a result, as a proposed project under the recent climate investment scheme, which, for those of you that don't know, is an investment bond which the council launched some 3 weeks ago and has already raised nearly £700,000. So solar on buildings within council-owned buildings within the city is being looked at. Some of you will also be aware that there is a pilot scheme to trial solar panels on council housing as well, which was approved recently by Housing Committee. So that work stream around solar on council buildings and also on council-owned properties is progressing through various work streams in the council. I'll just move on to BNG, if I may, Chair, and maybe make a recommendation about how we might take this forward. So around the council's biodiversity net gain projects, we do have a duty as a council to update and deliver a biodiversity net gain duty. And that's actually being currently worked on at the moment by Parks and Countryside colleagues, specifically within the ecology unit. So that work is going to put together a series of recommendations to council on how we discharge our duty. It will look at things like where we invest biodiversity credits. It will look at where we use council assets to increase biodiversity. And it will be making a series of recommendations that we will be adopting as a council to discharge our duty under that BNG condition. So again, active work on that, Chair, being progressed by this organisation. So What I was going to recommend in summary was that we draw those pieces of work into a cross-committee briefing, TRC and Parks and Countryside, so that we can explain a little bit more to members about those work streams and take recommendations from members on how they would like to see those work streams moving forward. I think stage one for members to understand what we're actually doing within work streams, and then take some recommendation from members on how this committee might want to move forward based on the projects I've outlined and any fresh projects which the council might want to pursue.
Thank you very much. Will, I can see Councillor Hogan indicating that he'd like to speak.
How does this tie in? Because there's the Simca Nature Recovery Strategy, which, as chair of that the scrutiny committee there, we're going to be revisiting. How much do you tie in with Simca and the work that they're doing? Because obviously on a nature recovery strategy, and how so that basically they're not doing some work, we're doing some work, and then it's being duplicated at a certain level, and then obviously, because as we see from the government, a lot of the money first comes to Simca and then gets reallocated, as we will see later in the programme. How are you working that way around?
Happy for me to come back, Chair. Yeah, really good question. I think there have been some delays to the local nature recovery strategy, which, as you rightly say, Councillor, is being developed by our regional colleagues. Having said that, officers in this council do sit on the steering group for that project, and so in order to address some of the concerns that you might have around coordination, in an ideal world, of course, we would have the local nature recovery strategy produced at the regional level, and then our policies would then follow. Given the need for the council to respond under its biodiversity duty, we are progressing that work because it's urgent, and actually, as the motion describes, there are opportunities for us to invest now. But I can reassure you that we will continue to feed into that LNRS at the regional level. My colleague Nikki Rivers, who's leading on the biodiversity work, is very, very close to the development of the local nature recovery strategy. So what I hope is that once that document is finalised at the regional level, and as you rightly say, those funding streams become available, our projects will be able to take advantage of those funding streams because they've been designed effectively alongside the emerging policy in LNRS.
Thank you very much, Will. So we have a recommendation there, colleagues, for that particular referral from full council to come to a knowledge briefing. Of course, that's part of our normal day-to-day business, that we take things to knowledge briefings in order to then be able to discuss and formulate policy. I'll just go to Councillor Mesereau, and then I'll go to Councillor Gamble-Pugh. Councillor Mesereau.
Thank you. It was a question about the work programme, to ask if we have a date yet for the refreshed parking plan. Obviously, this is so important for our transport and road danger reduction schemes to function properly. I'm really keen to see this brought forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mesereau, for that particular question. As I understand it, I don't think we do. I think officers are actively working on that, but I'll just turn to officers. I know that we have got John Shortland and we've also got Will Stewart. They may not be able to answer that particular question now. We might have to come back to you, but we can note it. Will or John, is there anything that we can add to that?
Yeah, I can say a bit. I think you're right, Chair, that there isn't a specific date, but we are working on that plan as a part of a suite of documents under our transport vision. Walking, wheeling, cycling already adopted, as is road safety strategy, and of course we'll be hearing about access and movement later today. Our parking plan or curbside strategy is in development, and we can bring a better estimate on the finalisation date for that probably to the next committee.
Thank you very much, and I think probably for those people who are watching at home, committee members will be very cognizant of it, but as a service, City Transport at the moment is doing a fabulous job, but has a large number of vacancies, and that does mean that the existing kind of officer corps are having to work incredibly hard to be able to deliver on the priorities that are set by this committee. So understandably, on occasions, sometimes things do slip as a result of that. Now, that's something that as an organisation, as a sector in local government, we're seeking to address, but it isn't something that will be solved overnight. Councillor Gamble-Pugh.
Thanks, Chair. I indicated to speak on the previous point. There was a proposal being put to the committee, which was that the referral from full council should go to a knowledge briefing. while I'm very supportive of things going to knowledge briefings, I do make a perennial point, meeting after meeting at these policy committees, as you'll be aware, that often our work programme is balanced more strongly towards the transport and regeneration projects, and there is not as much weighting towards climate. And on that basis alone, but also on the point of principle, that I think we should be making decisions as elected members in public at these committees. I would like to see the outcome of that knowledge briefing, or the outcome, the response to that referral from full council, to find space on the work programme and be on the agenda for the committee, please, Chair. And I've got some other points on the work programme as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gamble-Pugh. I think it's a very legitimate point. I'll just go to Will Stewart. I think he's nodding there in agreement.
Yeah, I think, you know, absolutely. I think I totally agree that we need to be absolutely clear about how we are, you know, dealing with those full council referrals in other committees. So my suggestion would be that once we've had that knowledge briefing, we agree with member colleagues how we want to represent that back at committee, and that might be at this committee and also at Parks and Countryside as well, who you know, particularly on BNG, are leading on our duty and might want to say something through their committee as well. But yeah, fully supportive of that.
And I think it's probably important just to highlight the point that Councillor Gamble-Pugh does make relentlessly, meeting after meeting, that quite clearly we do have an awful lot on our agenda. Much of it is transport and regen related, but it's important that we also don't forget the importance of the climate crisis and the lens that we need to place on that, and the policy that we need to be creating. Thank you very much, Councillor Gamble-Pugh. Do I see any other contributions from colleagues on any particular items to do with the work programme? Councillor Gamble-Pugh.
Thank you. Yeah, also on the, in line with that point I made previously about how we need to make more time on our work programme for items to do with the tackling the climate crisis. And in line of the points that we heard from members of the public earlier about the challenges that many people across the city have in getting accessible charging points for electric vehicles. I think although we want to provide options and we want to provide the opportunity for people where possible and desirable for them to get out of cars altogether, the reality is that people need to be transitioning where they've got motor vehicles to having EVs. And so much of our city is terrace housing where people just cannot get their own chargers, and therefore cross-pavement charging is something that I think we really ought to be looking at. My understanding is that the SIMCA has been allocated quite a few hundreds of thousands of pounds to cover the cost of some trials into this, and I think we ought to take up the offer of that funding if it's available. So in light of that, I would like to propose that officers bring forward a trial scheme as soon as possible, and that this should be added to our work programme, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gamble-Pugh. So am I hearing, therefore, that you'd like to add cross-pavement charging or a trial of that to our work programme? Now, you've made a case why you'd like to see that happen. We would, of course, need a seconder if that was something that we were going to consider. Councillor Horner.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this because I think, first of all, the important word is it is a trial. We need to find out what the pluses and minuses are. My concern for a while has been that if we're not careful, what we're actually saying is that people who've got driveways can charge their cars and people who don't can't. Now, where I live, I've got a driveway. The 3 streets next to mine are all terrace streets. I also would find it hard to work out where the nearest commercial charging point would be. There is one at Tesco's on convenience store on the high street, but there's not many charging points there. And I could well understand also why people buying EVs, which at the moment are still quite expensive, would prefer to have them in their site or somewhere near or somewhere they felt secure. In Bayton, for instance, we're on the edge of the A57. So if somebody steals a car, it doesn't take them long to get to the A57 and then out to the M1. So I understand it from that point of view as well. So I think we've got to trial this. We've got to see what the questions that arise out of it are. Because I think we need to make, as Councillor Gamble-Pugh said, we need to make people able to transition to EVs. And people who live in terrace streets currently have a big problem with that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Horner. Do I see any other members of the committee who wish to make a contribution on the particular suggestion? Councillor Diamond.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to ask, because we've just discussed and the Chair made the point of how stretched transport officers are at the moment. So what schemes, important schemes, would you like to deprioritise in order to bring this one forward instead?
And I'll just ask committee members whether they wish to make another contribution. You might want to reflect on that particular point that Councillor Diamond has made. Councillor Huggan and Councillor Shaw.
The transition to electric vehicles is already happening and at a pace, and we need to, our residents in Sheffield, I mean, I'm particularly having Crooks, where residents are forever coming to me and saying, I'm at work, they've offered me to transition to a electric car because that's what they're doing under, with their schemes, and they can't take it up because they've got nowhere to charge their car. And we need to look at lots of different trial schemes on how, which would work, where people would be more comfortable with, different areas which are, that's the thing. There are different areas we need to be different schemes. There's not one size going to fit all. I know that in any scheme that we have, and we need to make sure that we move at a pace that we work out what will work in different areas. And if we don't, then we're going to have a lot of very angry residents out there who've got nowhere to charge their cars unless you've got driveways. I mean, you've got the privilege of having a driveway for your car.
Thank you. And Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's quite possible. I mean, from 2030, you're not going to be able to buy a petrol or diesel car. So people, wherever they are in the city, if they need a new car, they'll have to be able to charge it somehow. Now, I care for someone who uses a wheelchair, and having cables going across pavements is a bit of a hazard. So there needs to be a solution, and I welcome a trial so that we can, not have these hazards going across pavements. And of course, we need to also consider, disabled people, people with mobility issues, who need to be able to get into their cars, and we don't want to force people to wheel down the street or to the supermarket to collect their very expensive mobility car. It needs to, we need to provide for them as well. So yes, I would welcome a trial.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shaw. And I'll just go back to Councillor Gamble-Pugh, who's indicated that he wished to speak. Of course, Councillor Gamble-Pugh did propose this in the first place.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, in proposing an addition to the committee's work plan, I am in no way failing to recognise how busy and stretched our officers are and the hard work that they do. However, the deployment of staff and financial resources is a managerial concern, whereas our concern is to exert political leadership and set a direction for our branch of local government. And in doing so, we have said time and time again that we want this local authority to go further and go faster and to do more and to do it more quickly. And it is frustrating to know that we're working within constraints of 14 years of cuts to public services, and that's the reality of where we are at the minute. However, the day that we start to say that we won't trial measures that could help in some way to tackle the climate crisis is the day that we've crossed a Rubicon and we maybe ought to be considering giving up. I would be surprised if that was the level of despondency that any of us in this committee had actually got to, although we might often feel a little bit like it's frustrating beyond belief. So I would press ahead with my proposal. Thank you for the seconding of that, and a reminder that we do need to press on and insist that action is taken by this local authority despite the constraints that we're working with. Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Diamond.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to respond to that briefly. I think the fact is that we do have to prioritise things, and we have just seen that the review of parking and curbside strategy has come off the agenda for this year because we've not been able to do that. So, you're asking effectively to include this instead, perhaps. And I think there are a lot of things that we do need to consider if we do take this forward. For example, as Councillor Shaw said, issues on accessibility, the issues around electricity safety, if two neighbours have a cable, or is it going to be first come, first serve? The impact on the viability of the Levi scheme that we're going to consider later. And I really want to ensure that this trial and cross-cable charging really has no cost for the council, and there's no liability to the council. And if we do proceed with something like that, it should cross-subsidise genuinely accessible and equitable transport and sustainable transport schemes that benefit every member of our community, not just people that can afford to drive EVs. I mean, it's really important to remember that the embodied carbon associated with everyone who currently drives switching to EVs would use up our entire carbon budget. Now, I accept that some people, especially in rural communities, do need to drive at present, and also people, disabled people at present, because of the way our society is quite ableist. But that is something that we should be seeking to address as a priority rather than EVs above that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Diamond. I guess in bringing that discussion together, we'll have a vote on this in a second. I guess as chair of the committee, I don't have a view on it, but as a member of the committee, I certainly do have a view on this particular issue. I guess from my perspective, I think that a trial is designed to address many of those issues that have been mentioned when it comes to safety and equitability. When it comes to testing the safety, the practicalities, about how we deal with the wider rollout. I think now we've received hundreds of requests from residents across this city calling for a trial, and I think it's really incumbent upon all of us to respond to the people who in this city want to do their bit for the planet by switching to EVs from auto combustion engines. We know that places across the country like Manchester, Nottinghamshire, Sunderland, Milton Keynes and Reading and lots of other different places have had trials. Many of them roll those trials out successfully across the whole borough area, and I think it's only right that we do that here today. So we have a proposal to add a cross-pavement charging trial to our work programme today that was proposed by Councillor Gamble-Pugh and seconded by Councillor Ian Horner. I'm going to ask colleagues to vote on that now. So if you wish to support that proposal, because we don't have full agreement, if you wish to support that proposal, can I ask you just to indicate, to raise your hand now? You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members of the committee who wish to vote in favour of adding that trial for cross-pavement charging to our work programme. Can I ask colleagues who wish to oppose that to indicate, to put their hand up? I see no colleagues. Anyone who wishes to abstain from that? I can see 2 colleagues who wish to abstain from that as well. So therefore that has been added to our work programme, and thank you very much for that discussion, colleagues, today. So after that discussion about our work programme and also with the overview that's been provided by Amanda, we'll then move to a vote but on the whole of the work programme, but Councillor Gamble-Pugh indicating to speak.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I've got one further point. Having said all of that about how important it is to have more stuff on climate change and not so much on transport, there is one on transport that I just wanted to just check whether we're going to get any space for. And this is on the 20-mile-an-hour residential schemes. So we've got two areas in my ward where we've had these schemes successfully installed, but there are kind of significant roads that run through them on Chapel Road and Hunshelf Road, where for various technocratic reasons they've had to stay as 30 mile an hour, but actually realistically the traffic goes at 50 miles an hour, it's really dangerous. And that was the rationale for selecting those neighbourhoods for the 20 mile an hour scheme rollout. Now we've had petitioners have come, I think particularly when we had the scheme rolled out in Fulwood, people came and said they wanted Fulwood Road restricting in speed, and they'd researched it, and they said that there'd been some national changes in regulations or the law that we could now adopt in terms of changing our local approach and policy. And I think at that time we said we would look at it and it would be on the work plan, and I don't think it is. And can we get an update, and can we get that on the work plan? Because it doesn't make sense.
I'm more than happy to confirm that. I think if we look on the work programme, I think it's page 29 of your agenda pack, meeting 6 of the municipal year, which is on the 18th of March 2026, does have a reference that will receive a review of that 20 mile an hour area policy and an update on that as well. It does say as part of it that it'll have a review of the 20 mile an hour policy and the criteria for introducing sign-only 20 mile an hour schemes in Sheffield. So that will be coming for consideration to the committee. Of course, in the run-up to that, it'll also be subject to knowledge briefings as well and further dialogue outside this space for members.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, with all of those discussions in mind and with the addition that we've just had there about cross-pavement charging and that particular trial, are colleagues quite content with approving the work programme that Amanda's put together that we've just added another thing to? Yes, I can see that colleagues are nodding and there's no dissent. So therefore that has been carried. Colleagues, apologies, we probably do therefore need to be moving through the agenda at pace a little bit whilst also giving due consideration to each item, as we did spend quite a bit of time there looking at the work programme, which is a very important thing to do. Our next item on our kind of formal items for consideration is item 8, and this is the 2025-26 Q1 Budget Monitoring Report. It's on page 31 of the agenda pack, and our presenting officer is Jane Wilby, who is going to be taking us through it today. Thank you so much, Jane. And you've got a musical Christmas accompaniment from the bells, which sadly I hear is not actually a bell, it's a tape player, which is like sacrilege to tell people this, but happy Christmas.
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid it's not quite as exciting as the Christmas carols here, but I'm Jane Wilby, I'm Assistant Director of Finance and Accounting, and I'm here to provide the overview of the 25-26 Q2 budget monitoring position. This has been to all the other policy committees, so this is the final one today, actually. So I'll be taking you through the key pressures, the actions that are underway, and the outlook for the remainder of the year. So at Q2, the Council is projecting an overspend of 23.6 million, which is 4.6% of our net revenue budget, which is an improvement of 4.6 million since the first quarter, reflecting the impact of the targeted mitigations and tighter spending controls. So our aim is to reduce that overspend to below 20 million by the end of the year and continue to drive to reduce those overspends. So the key drivers of those overspends are consistent with the previous quarter's report in adult social care, children's services, home to school transport and homelessness. So in terms of actions and mitigations, there's lots of targeted work underway and senior leadership is closely overseeing that recovery. In adults, the overspend is forecast at 29.7 million, but that is a 1.6 million improvement since the first quarter. The focus is on cutting non-essential spend, using technology and consolidating a lot of transformation projects. In children's, the positions worsened by 4.9 million, with the quarter to a 19.8 million overspend in total due to rising demand, particularly in expensive placements. The service remains committed to reviewing high-cost placements, expanding kinship care and developing new fostering models. In home to school transport, the positions remain stable from the first quarter at a 6.6 million overspend, but actions around demand management, expanding personal travel budgets, improving fleet efficiency and reducing single taxi occupancy are all underway and expect to yield results in the next quarter when we can quantify the impact of those measures. Homelessness services are forecast at 2.1 million overspend on temporary accommodation, but this is a comparable improvement of 5 million on the previous year. So the actions that are being taken are making a real impact to reduce the use of temporary accommodation, which includes stepping up prevention activities, improving void turnarounds and a change to our allocations policy have all made an impact. As a response to the position, organisational wide spending controls are now in place. So we've got recruitment restrictions, vacancy factors in budgets and tighter controls on discretionary spend. They've all been implemented since September. So there's an established exemption process for any decisions for roles that are regulatory requirements, health and safety critical, income generating, grant funding, or if they have a direct impact on delivering future Sheffield programme. So we've seen a 3.7 million impact of introducing these vacancy factor budgeting and a positive response from services that have reforecast to make sure that their spending plans are now aligned to reduced budgets. We've also got corporate mitigations in the outturn, which totaled 22.8 million, which include allocations for housing benefit, high cost placements, and we've used our 24-25 collection fund surplus, which we'd usually have taken to reserves. At the end of Q2, the Transport, Regen and Climate Committee's forecasted an underspend of £1 million against a net revenue budget of 38 billion. The most significant variances include 200k shortfall in building standards alongside a 700,000 shortfall in planning application income, which is partially offset by an anticipated 400,000 uplift from future government fee changes. Highways Network Management is showing a favourable variance of 600,000 from surplus income in coordination and licences, with a potential further income of 200,000 based on the current trends for the rest of the year. Salary savings in city transport and city sustainability have also contributed positively as a response to the budgeting vacancy factors. Overall, the budgets are well managed and proactively monitored with good engagement with finance. So overall, the environment remains challenging with continued uncertainty around future government funding. We're actually receiving the full details of the multi-year settlement today at 2 p.m, so we should be working through the detail as we speak to enable us to finalise the budget setting for 26-27. So whilst we've made progress in reducing the overspend, significant pressures still remain, and our focus is on maintaining robust controls, improving processes and delivering transformation so that we can be that financially sustainable organisation.
Thank you very much, Jane, for taking us through that Q1 budget monitoring report. Colleagues, do I have any questions for Jane? Alexei.
Thanks very much for the report, Jane. But actually, my question is not to you, but I was going to ask if officers reflect on the impact of the recruitment restriction on our service, whether it's hampered our ability to deliver our schemes and therefore has actually cost money, because as we all know, inflation leads to rising costs. To items falling off the work plan, such as the curbside parking strategy, and could it be argued that the recruitment restriction is the inversion of an investor save scheme? It's like a save now, spend more later scheme.
Thanks, Councillor Diamond. Of course, we'll ask officers if they're able to reflect on that, but I would say that getting a grip of our spend as a council is really, really important. It's incumbent on Paul and of all of us, and living within our means is, of course, really, really important. But Will Stewart, is there anything that you can add to that?
Yes, I can give my own reflections. I mean, I think some of what Councillor Diamond has said, I probably won't comment on, but I think, you know, the reality is that, you know, this organisation has introduced a range of spending restrictions, as Jane has really ably outlined. You know, it's important that the council, you know, maintains a stable financial approach. You know, in the long run, I do believe that that will stand us in good stead and allow us to ultimately begin to grow our capacity again, following the transformation that Jane outlined. It is true, I think, that, you know, the recruitment restrictions and other spend restrictions have had an impact on our ability to deliver against projects and services. In my own area, you know, in the departments that I oversee, you know, I think we've probably got about 40 vacancies, which, you know, vacancies at that level do have an impact on our ability to deliver. However, you know, as already been, acknowledged by members, we work incredibly hard and officers work incredibly hard to deliver those projects for the city. And, it is never our intention for anything to drop off the list of priorities. Sometimes we do have to prioritise, and we've had a really good debate here in the chamber today about what members want to see, and of course we respect that, and we'll reorganise to be able to deliver. There is an onus on us as well to think about new ways of delivery, and that might involve partnerships with other organisations like Simca, new models of delivery, and as we've said, and as was referenced by Councillor Diamond there. There are options for us to be able to invest now in order to build capacity and then allow us to be able to, build projects for the future. So, it's a balance, I think, is how I would summarise. It's important that we do, respect the organisation's desire to meet, quite tight spending restrictions, and, we need to play our part in that. But I don't think we can get away from the fact that, it does probably slow down our ability to deliver, but ultimately we are committed to delivering everything on the work programme.
Thank you very much for that response, and thank you, Councillor Diamond, for the particular question. Any other questions or comments with regards to the item that Jane has just presented towards us on the 2025-26 Quarter 1 Budget Monitoring Report? I don't see anyone else wishing to speak, so therefore we will ask colleagues whether they are content with the recommendations for their approval, which are on page 33 of your agenda pack. Can I ask colleagues whether we're all agreed with those recommendations? I can see colleagues nodding and there's no dissent, so thank you very much, Jane, for taking us through that report today, and therefore we have approved the recommendations in the report that you brought today. Our next item is item 9, which is the City Centre Access and Movement Plan. It's on page 55 of the agenda pack. We have got Ben King, who is presenting this today. But before officers speak to this, can I just say thank you very much to all members of this committee who have participated in such a positive way to bring forward this piece of work alongside council officers, alongside businesses, residents, people from across our city to bring forward this really, really important strategy that guides the future of how people move into, out of and around the city centre.
Good afternoon, members. Before I commence, I'd just like to introduce Evan Ingold, who is a key member of the project team and will be helping me to present this item this afternoon. The City Centre Access and Movement Plan is the accumulation of 12 months of research, analysis and engagement. The resultant document now provides not just a framework for investment in transport in the city centre, but the confidence that will deliver positive and lasting change. It will make the city centre more accessible and welcoming for all and enable the economic and cultural heart of Sheffield to thrive. In doing so, the plan aligns with the wider policy context, including Sheffield Transport Vision, the decarbonisation route map and the emerging local plan, to facilitate growth and provide a step change in the availability of attractive and realistic sustainable travel choices. The plan is ambitious, and it needs to be. Estimated increases in the demand to travel in the future dictate that we need to be proactive and make better use of the limited road space we have available. This means that we cannot continue to rely on the private car in the way the city centre has in recent years. We also need to be more equitable in the use of road space. No longer should it be dominated by the car. To achieve this, the plan will look to consolidate traffic onto a more efficiently operating inner ring road and reallocate road space within the city centre to pedestrians, cyclists and public transport. In this regard, a key principle behind the plan is to develop priority networks for each mode. This means that we will move away from trying to cater for all types of road user on all streets in the city centre. There will be clearly defined routes for cyclists and public transport, and a more extensive, high-quality public realm for pedestrians. This will result in fewer conflicts between users competing for the same road space and high-quality provision for all. In turn, this will provide the foundations to enable economic and housing growth, improved accessibility and reduced social exclusion, better air quality and reduced carbon emissions, and a healthier population. To get to this point, we have undertaken an extensive engagement exercise. And I think now's a timely point for Evan to produce our award, which was recently received by the authority. Our engagement has included regular meetings of the Task and Finish group and a liaison with colleagues across the City Council and partners at SIMCA to make sure that we've developed a truly integrated approach to the plan. And it is, as the Chair alluded to, a result and a reflection of cross-party collaboration. Our approach to engaging with the public is award-winning, and as you can now see, we've been recognised by the Yorkshire branch of the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transportation in relation to the equality, diversity and inclusion of our engagement process and our efforts to reach and engage hard-to-reach groups. And in this regard, the resultant plan has been shaped by those voices, and we can be confident that it does and will deliver what the public want. So to summarise, the plan provides a fantastic basis for the transformation of the transport offer in the city centre. This transformation will be based upon a step change in the quality and equity of the transport network, and we're starting to see that now with recent schemes delivered at Westbar and Fargate, for example. And in turn, the transport network will be a facilitator for housing and economic growth, and a facilitator for social inclusion and civic pride in a vibrant city centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you very much, Evan, also for the diligent work that you have carried out in order to bring this for us today. Colleagues, do I see anyone who wishes to ask a question or make a contribution? Councillor Mersrow, and then Councillor Shaw, and then Councillor Horner, and then Councillor Diamond. I'll have to try and remember that. Councillor Mersrow.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Evan and Ben. I've really enjoyed being part of the Task and Finish group that's worked on this plan over the last year, and it's fantastic to see this being finalised now. As City Ward Councillor for the area that this will most affect, I'm really happy to support this. Echoing what's said in the report, we really do need to prioritise the most space efficient modes, not least because of the reality of climate change and because of the unfairness, inefficiency and levels of danger of the transport status quo. Because as well as improving travel to and within the city centre, it will have other benefits as well, like improving the public realm and making the streets safer and quieter and cleaner. So the city centre is currently going through a really exciting transformation, and I feel that now is the perfect opportunity to future-proof our streets and make them nicer, livable, as well as more attractive to residents and visitors, and safer for everyone as well. And also note the benefit highlighted in section 11.3 of the report, that it will strengthen the city's position for seeking external funding by demonstrating a coherent and long-term approach to how the city centres are proposed to function. I've got an amendment and a few points and comments. So in 3.2.5 and 9.3, it says cutting city centre traffic by 20%. Now, we had agreed in the final draft that it was going to say at least 20%, and I think that's an important point to make, because I think we do need to be more ambitious. So my comments are: well done on the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transportation Award. That's fantastic, really well done. I'd just like to make a comment on page 73 that there's some age-related assumptions and generalisations there, that older people don't cycle, because many people who are older do cycle, and in fact in the Netherlands, women over 65 are the biggest cycling demographic. I'd also say that the statement that some older adults may be affected by reduced private vehicle access could just be changed to some adults may be affected by reduced private vehicle access, because I don't believe that it's something that's necessary for older adults. And a lot of statistics, in fact, show that many older adults don't drive and can't drive. And my final comment is that I'm really looking forward to seeing the improved wayfinding mentioned in the report, because this will make a huge difference for people travelling in the city centre. It'll be a really positive addition. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer. We'll take a few other people's contributions as well. And I think it's important that we come back to your suggestion for an amendment later on. If Councillor Mercer, if you're happy with us coming back to your suggestion for an amendment later, is that okay? I've got Councillor Shaw, Horner, and then Diamond. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. So I've got some questions, and then I've got a comment at the end, so just to break it up a bit. Thank you, Ben and Evan, for the report. So the question is, so in the plan it talks about short, medium, and long term, but how long is short, medium, and long? Is short 5 years, or is it 10 years, or is it next year? Just so, like, when we look at, you know, where things are long term, is that basically, you know, in 30 years' time, or is it by the end of this 15-year period that the plan covers? It talks about delivery of these schemes within the plan, you know, gradually over that 15 years. I mean, how likely are all the schemes that are all listed, and it's quite a long list, how likely is it that they will all actually be delivered all well on their way to delivery by the end of this plan? And there's references to integrating with the National Cycle Network. Now, the National Cycle Network 6 comes into the city centre via Park Square roundabout, goes along Sheaf Street, up Howard Street, Surrey Street, Barker's Pool, Division Street, and onwards. But that doesn't align with the routes and things on the maps. So will there be discussions with the Walk Wheel Cycle Trust about realigning the National Cycle Network, or will the maps be updated to align, you know, vice versa? And finally, on the main transport interchange, it talks about developing new transport interchange on Arundel Gate because the main interchange by the station is underused. Why is it underused? Why aren't buses or bus operators using it? And with you know, with buses coming into public control with franchising from 2028, why can't we make bus routes use the existing interchange rather than spending lots of money developing new interchanges instead? So those are my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shaw, and I'll just go to Councillor Horner before going back to Evan and Ben for some reflections, and then going to Councillor Diamond. Evan and Ben.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the points and the questions. I think the way to answer that is in terms of setting out the next steps and how we take this plan forward from here. And that is, there's two separate parts to that. The first is in terms of developing the future programme. So the plan sets out indicative timeframes for these schemes to come forward. But our next task, as we move this forward, is to flesh that out in a bit more detail and start to understand the interdependencies between some of those schemes. And we'll do that through validating the action plan, the vision we've got within this city centre access movement plan through the transport model. So we've got that understanding of the implications on the highway network and so on, to flesh out a more detailed programme, more detailed delivery programme. As part of that as well, we've already made steps to develop individual design briefs for some of the short-term priorities in the action plan, and we're in the process of packaging those together And when we're happy with those briefs, they'll be passed over to AME so that designs will start to emerge in the next few months. You know, this is not something that's going to sit on the shelf. This plan is going to be put into action immediately, subject to approval at today's committee, of course. So that's how the programme will evolve and develop from here on in. I think the second key point to make in that regard is in terms of funding. And we are waiting to hear from Simca in terms of the scale of award associated with the improving transport for city regions funding allocation, which we'll receive from Simca. And importantly, the conditions attached to that funding we receive. There may well be conditions attached to that, and there may well not be. And we would then have a strategic decision to make in terms of the amount of funding we allocate specifically to this delivery plan. As is alluded earlier this afternoon, there are several other delivery plans coming forward or already in place. And upon receipt of that award of funding from Simca, there'll be discussion to be had about how that is allocated and assigned across all these different plans coming forward. And that will obviously have implications for how many of the schemes listed within the city centre plan emerge within the next 15 years. But what we're absolutely keen to do and build on previous successes is enhance our existing links with Highways Development Control to ensure that when new developments come forward in the city centre, that when they're looking to secure Section 106 mitigation for those new developments, that those contributions are sought in line with what we're looking to deliver through this plan. Hopefully that answers most of your points. There was one other, I recall, in relation to the bus interchange. Yes, it's an interesting one. The current bus interchange is not popular, and it's not popular with bus users because of its physical separation from the heart of the city. Most passengers want to alight on Arundel Gate because it's close to the services they want to access. So, as I say, going forward and fleshing out some of the details of these individual schemes, we'll look at how we can sort of manage that sort of demand with existing infrastructure and how it can work better in the future. And turning to previous points about various tweaks to the plan, absolutely, we're happy to accept the amendments suggested. I feel there may well have been an issue with slight version control, because I do recall the conversation where it was stressed that traffic reduction should be at least 20%, and so we're happy to update and amend the plan accordingly.
Just for clarity, I'm just looking at the document now, and I think on page 15 of the plan, it does make reference specifically to that as well. It says we can cut city centre traffic, congestion, by at least 20%. So it is there, I think. Councillor Mersero, perhaps it's another technical point that I don't understand, but you might be able to add clarity to that.
Yeah, it was just to say I noticed that there were two different versions of the report, the one in the appendix and the one in the main document. So it seems to be sort of some issue with consistency. So, yeah.
Thank you for making us aware of that kind of mismatch. It may well be previous versions of the document don't necessarily reflect that. Just checking on the website now that's available to people who are following at home, and hopefully is also in your agenda packs, colleagues. It does mention that specifically on page 15, so we've just double checked it, and it does include that specific reference. I think we've also got Councillor Diamond who wishes to make a contribution.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think it was just a discrepancy in the actual report as opposed to the plan, which is the appendix. That's the discrepancy. So, yeah, I think we're adopting the plan, aren't we? So, should be okay. But yeah, I just wanted to say, echo what Reece said and thank everyone for their work on this. It was really, I really enjoyed working with everyone as part of the Task and Finish group. It's really excellent that you've got the reward. The award. And I thought the consultation engagement was really good as part of this. I'm also on the Access Liaison group, and when you came to that group, I think it was really great how we included some of the amendments that they had to make it as accessible as possible in the plan. and some of the groups that Steer were able to speak to in their consultation, we don't always manage to reach out to. For example, people seeking sanctuary, a lot of disability groups that we spoke to, young people, we tried to include a widest range possible. In terms of the statement in the public questions, I do sympathise a bit with Sam Wakely, but this was a plan that we all worked on together, and there's some compromise involved in that. But I do believe that the plan can act as a catalyst for livable streets for communities throughout the city and accelerate our climate action, because it will demonstrate the benefits of health, well-being, safety and sociability, and on alternative modes of transport, and an alternative approach to how we use space on streets. So yeah, I'm really pleased with this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Diamond. And I also missed Councillor Horner a short while ago. Sorry, Councillor Horner.
Thank you. Just to kind of follow on from what Councillor Shaw said, the important thing now, this is a very good plan, but the most important thing now is that we deliver public transport improvements. Because it's one thing to say, let's stop people coming into the city centre by car. We have to provide them with viable alternatives. And I reminded yourself and Councillor Diamond the other day that we had agreed at some point to go and look at the Coventry Very Light Rail scheme, and I understand they've now come up with a new line which they're about to start. Because I think we have to look at all different forms of public transport with a view to getting deliverability, because I wouldn't want us to face the problem that Nottingham does, having not had a tram extension since 2015, and now seemingly how its tram extensions are mired in great controversy because nobody can agree them. Because I keep hearing how wonderful Nottingham's transport is, but it appears not so. So I do think we need to deliver viable public transport. I was looking the other day, it's funny how when you research these things, all various different forms of transport, I hadn't realised that modern trolleybuses, for instance, do not require to have big batteries, because if you wire the uphill section, they only need a small battery to go downhill. So technology is evolving. We need to be with it. We need to grab it and enhance it, because if we don't offer better public transport, speaking as somebody who lives on the outskirts of the city, I know that people on the outskirts of the city are not seized always of the wonders of the city centre, because they wonder how they could get there. And we need to deliver through bus franchising, through wherever the tram vision is going, and we need to turn it into a reality and stop talking about a vision. If we don't do that, this plan will be nothing more than warm words and fine ideals.
Thank you, Councillor Horner, and I think that's entirely the point that Councillor Janet Ridler makes to me. She represents somewhere on the other side of the city in Stockbridge and Upper Don, really, and you couldn't be further away, both of you, from the city centre. So I know it's something that is widely felt. Do I see any other colleague who wishes to ask a question or make an intervention? I don't, so therefore I'll just go back. In fact, I'll just go to Richard Shaw, Councillor Shaw, and then I'll go back to Ben and Evan. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. I did promise a comment, if now's the time.
If you're happy to.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, so I just want to say I do really welcome this plan. I think it's really important that the number of journeys is predicted to increase by as much as it is, that we shift as many of those journeys to more efficient means. I think this plan should be welcomed by all road users, including people who have no intention of getting out of the car and onto a bus or cycling or walking more, because the biggest source of inconvenience to those drivers is of the car drivers. And as demonstrated by the figure on page 6 of the plan, congestion isn't caused by cycle lanes or trams or buses. It's basically too many cars being used to transport a single person a short distance that could have been walked or cycled in the time that usually spends stationary in traffic. I welcome the commitment within the plan to increasing the number of blue badge parking bays within the city centre. I think it's really important that we increase that provision for those people who need them, and consolidating the amount of surface car parks into more strategically placed multi-storey car parks, so we can free up more land for housing and more employment land. And it is really important that if this plan is adopted, it's backed up with the funding from Simca and from the government. The government's consultation on the third cycling walking investment strategy, was free. The consultation for that closed on Monday. I did respond to that actually, but based on the kind of the weakness and lack of targets and ambition within that strategy, I'm somewhat sceptical, Chair, at this point that government will provide us with the funding that we want to help us, or that we need to help us meet our ambitions. So yes, it's a good plan, and we need government support to deliver it as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and in fact I'll just go to Councillor Diamond and then I'll go for final reflections.
Yeah, just a final reflection that if we did want to generate our own funding and able to achieve this scheme, we could learn something from Nottingham that Ian mentioned earlier and introduce a workplace parking levy, which enabled them to have raise £10 million of revenue per year, and then 1 billion including match funding over 10 years. So that's the sort of investment that we need. It probably won't come from, I hope it comes from central government, but we could do it ourselves. But
thank you, Councillor Diamond, for your contribution there. I guess just before we do hand over for those final reflections from Evan and Ben, I'm really pleased to see this document. We've worked collaboratively, all of us together on this. I think it's quite interesting to see that the consultation, the discussion, the engagement with members of the city has been awarded and is prize winning. That shows, doesn't it, that we're doing something right, because it's really important that we bring as many people along with us on this journey to transform our city as possible. I think it's really interesting when you look at a tram in our city, how it can transport hundreds of people into, out of and around our city centre, and we do have to move to more space efficient forms of public transport and transport more broadly. And I'm really pleased that this report highlights that. I'm also struck by how outside, perhaps not at the moment because the weather is absolutely diabolical, but most days and most evenings in Sheffield city centre over the last few weeks, we have had a huge number of people coming to our Christmas markets, and that demonstrates, doesn't it, how creating people-friendly streets allows us to drive economic activity, it improves health outcomes for people, it makes our city centre a better place to live. Later on in our agenda, we're going to receive a report about the fabulous regeneration that's happening in our city centre and around it, in places like Morford and around that, the surrounding area, the station and around there, and also Neeps End and Furness Hill. And in order to be able to prepare for that, we need to make sure that the city centre is a fabulous place for 20,000 new homes to be part of it, really. So I'm really pleased that we've got this today. I think it really does mark an important moment in the evolution of our city. So thank you very much. I'll go back to Ben and Evan for any final reflections.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to say I welcome the positive comments this afternoon on the plan and members' willingness and enthusiasm to support the entire process. And I think that is reflected in the high quality of this final plan. It's also worth noting that it's a framework for investment. And so alluding to members' points about innovation, that framework allows us to capture innovation and changes in the transport offer and changing technology that are at our disposal. And I think we're living in times of radical change when it comes to transport choices, the likes we've not seen in the last 20, 25 years. And by having that clear framework, it gives us that ability to sort of adapt and evolve to whatever is appropriate to meet these overarching principles which the plan establishes. As a final point, I think it's important that we complete the story and by that I mean reporting annually on the progress we're making against the ambitions the plan contains. So I would like, on an annual basis, to present annual progress reports, not just capture progress against the ambitions within this delivery plan, but across all the delivery plans we're pulling together. Having that annual reporting will provide transparency and demonstrate the impact we're having, but it will also meet the needs of partners such as Simca to demonstrate that the funding they're providing us is having an impact on the ground locally. So that concludes comments from myself, and once again, thank you for your support.
Thank you very much, Ben and Evan. Colleagues, if I don't see anyone else who wishes to make a contribution on this particular item, can I see whether colleagues are content with approving this particular item, which is the City Centre Access and Movement Plan? It's on page 55 of the agenda pack, and the recommendations are on page 57. Colleagues, can I see some nods if you are happy? I don't see any discontent, so therefore this item has passed. Thank you very much, Ben and Evan, for bringing this item today. It's very much appreciated. That therefore moves us on to item 10, which is South Yorkshire's collaborative procurement and delivery of electric vehicle charging infrastructure. It's a very long title of something that's quite important. It's on page 79 of our agenda pack, and I think our presenting officer is going to be Ben King and Dermot, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, me again, I'm afraid. I'd just like to introduce Dermot Egan, a colleague who sits alongside me here and helped field, I'm sure, many questions from members in response to this paper. Dermot's been involved in the development of the Levi scheme from the outset and will assist me ably this afternoon. The South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority are set to go out to tender to secure a provider to implement and operate a network of predominantly on-street electric vehicle charge points. Before they can do so, they need to secure the approval of the constituent authorities which make up South Yorkshire, together with the Department for Transport. We're bringing this paper to you now so that we can go back to Simca to confirm that they have our support to proceed in this procurement exercise, if you indeed choose to offer them that support. The Local Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Scheme, which is better known as Levi, is a government initiative to pump prime the rollout of charge points across the UK to bridge the gap between the coverage of provision and the projected increase in EV car ownership in the coming years. It will provide charge points in residential locations in which EV owners struggle to charge vehicles on their own property, predominantly because they are reliant on on-street parking. At this stage, it's hard to say precisely how many charge points will be provided or their specific locations, but it's anticipated it will number in the hundreds. What we do know is that the charge points will predominantly be located on street as opposed to on the footway, and it will be a collaborative approach between ourselves and the provider to determine the precise locations of every individual charge point. And the point I'm trying to make here is that the introduction of the charge points will not be to the detriment of the movement of other road users, particularly pedestrians and cyclists. We also know that the location of these charge points needs to be commercially viable, the scheme needs to be a success, and in doing so, we also need to ensure that there's good coverage across all parts of the city centre so that access to EV charges is equitable. It's important to point out that the award of the Levi scheme to a successful operator would not prevent the City Council or other private operators from also providing charge points in the city. There is no exclusivity referenced in the draft contract. The nature of the provision of EV charge points is such that there is a significant amount of risk involved from the operator's perspective, predominantly due to the high upfront costs and the long lead-in time to them becoming profitable. It is why the government is having to pump prime this process. And the amount of government subsidy that will be awarded to the successful provider will total around £9 million. It is a stipulation of the Levi scheme that it is private sector led, predominantly because of the risks involved and the desire to capture expertise in the private sector. Whilst we can continue to provide our own Sheffield City Council funded charge points and even introduce more, we wouldn't be able to use Levi funding to support this process. Simca, who are leading the procurement exercise, and the City Council will receive two forms of income from the successful provider. Firstly, there will be a concession fee that will cover the project management costs of the scheme incurred by Simca and the Council. When the scheme is fully up and running, it is anticipated this will amount to £300,000 per annum for Simca, of which Sheffield City Council will receive around £60,000. The second area of potential income for the Council is in relation to a margin cap. This is predominantly to stop customers being, for want of a better term, ripped off by a provider, increasing charges in the future, and ensures that the City Council benefits from any surplus profit the operator makes. The margin cap itself is something that will be determined through the tender process. It is important to note that there is no financial risk to Sheffield City Council of this procurement exercise and the operation of Levi in the city, and all risk will be assumed by the operator themselves. Now I've sort of given a brief overview of what the scheme is, it's important to conclude by setting out why this scheme is important for Sheffield. Firstly, in terms of emissions, we want to reduce emissions from traffic across the city. Whilst we'll continue to prioritise other modes of travel on the network, particularly active travel and public transport, reducing emissions from vehicles at the point of use is important in terms of having cleaner air and the long-term health benefits that provides. It's important to point out in this regard that it is the most disadvantaged communities which suffer disproportionately from the adverse impact of traffic. The second key rationale and motivation behind delivering the scheme locally is in terms of EV ownership. Charge points will increase the opportunity for many residents to own an EV vehicle. At present, it is not often considered a viable option for those without a driveway, and so this presents a more equitable approach to EV ownership. And this is particularly pertinent given the impending ban on petrol and diesel engines from 2030, as was referred to earlier this afternoon. And my final point is in regard to investment. The money being made available through this process, some £9 million, will be lost to the region if we don't pursue Levi. And without the funding to pump prime the process, which the £9 million presents, we could stifle the take-up of EV car ownership, given the private sector to date has been relatively reluctant to invest heavily in the infrastructure because of the risks I previously alluded to. The government have made it clear that this is the last time public funding will be made available to support this process, and as such, it is an opportunity we recommend the City Council pursue via the Simca-led procurement exercise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thank you also to Dermot for the work to bring this to us today. I have seen that Councillor Huggan would like to speak on this. Is there any other member who wishes to? Councillor Diamond. Councillor Huggan.
Thank you, Chair. This is very, very welcome, because I know across Crooks, I mean, that there are real issues about I've mentioned earlier in the meeting. There's a couple of questions. You know, I really support this, because are we looking at sort of different types of infrastructure, or is it going to be a one-size-fits-all in terms of the type of, you know, what I've seen in my ward in Flodden Street? looks very good. It appears to be well used, obviously. But how innovative can we be as a city council as well? Because one of the other things I was going to say is we have lots of garage plots, etc., in parts of the city where people can't, will put their cars around there, which is away from their, not on a residential street. Are we going to have the ability to do some of that? To put, as part of the, when we're talking about the sites and how fluid are we on the sites that we're allowed to put in? I mean, because obviously we're pump priming this, but are we going to say we want a site here, and then whoever we've got as our provider, they'll say, but we want it here? Is how will that work in terms of where the sites will be? Obviously, we don't want to sort of shove them somewhere else that nobody, no residential person who's invested in a electric car puts it, and Councillor Horner said about they want them to be relatively close to their houses if at all possible. So how will that work? Just as a start.
Thank you. I'll just go to Councillor Diamond and see if there's anyone else who'll do rounds of three. Councillor Diamond.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I've got quite a few questions arising from this report. And some concerns about its viability. I mean, we've got council-operated EVs at the moment, and they might make a loss, and we're wanting to potentially transfer them to the operator. Why would they want them if they make a loss? And also, if it's not viable for them, for us, why isn't it viable for them? I think it obviously is going to be viable, but therefore sort of query the government's approach to this. But that's not for this report. On page 86 that you said, it said that the operator will retain all revenue associated with the operation, but then I think that's contradicted later because we will be getting some. So I just want a bit of clarification around that. And you said that it will be predominantly on street, but have we? Is there any scope for promoting sort of charge and ride proposals or using the council car parks based on what we discussed previously in the use of curbside space? I'm concerned that the business case for this will be undermined by cross-pavement charging. So I was just wondering who would have liability and pick up the tab if this becomes obsolete and the operator goes out of business entirely. And so there's just one other question is about the electricity. So who will provide the electricity for the scheme? Could SCC provide the electricity, or and have a revenue scheme in some cases? Yeah, and the final ones is around the interaction with the Streets Ahead contract. Is that going to make it prohibitively expensive? And will they have like first refusal on putting in the infrastructure? Will there have to be a commuted sum for the life of, for like the whole course of the contract that's already halfway through for some reason? So I've got a lot of questions. If we could answer some of them, that would be helpful.
Should we just see if there's any other colleague who wishes to kind of ask a question? Don't see anyone else, so let's go for some reflections on those particular points that colleagues have made.
Yeah, just on the locations, there's no restriction on the locations. It's primarily on street. One of the partners, Barnsley, I believe it is targeting off-street car parks as their kind of main area. We've looked at on-street mainly because we have a lot of terrace housing, and it tends to be on-street on terrace roads where that's where we need to have charging, and we don't have many car parks most of our car parks either have chargers in at the moment or are earmarked for development. But as we negotiate and as we sit down with whoever the successful contractor is and work through the plan for each LSOA, we'll look at different locations, but it could be kind of your fast on-street charges that we have at the moment. They could propose rapid charging, super rapid charging. It's kind of open for everything. The only thing we're quite restricted on is slower charging, lamppost charging, where other areas like Doncaster, I think we'll be looking at that. All our lampposts have been moved to the back of the highway, so it makes it a lot more difficult, or back of the footpath, so it's a lot more difficult to do charging off lampposts.
Does that, Councillor, can come back on that one?
I was going to say, when you said about the offer, because I can name 2 or 3 terrace streets where I can name immediately adjacent to, you know, the bottom of St Thomas Road or Castle Road, for instance, there'd be places where you'd be able to put in electric charging points that would be satisfy a place like St Thomas Road or Forest Road, for instance, that would be close enough, but they're immediately adjacent. So I hope we are looking at that, because that's the sort of charging points that would work, but they're not, you know, and actually any that's been earmarked for development, there'd be that, if that could be worked in so that we could put the charging points in, they would be the sort of places that I'd hope that we would look at to make sure that we could get this in, obviously subject to the committee's approval.
We've started looking at building GIS maps, basically, of areas where there is no off-street parking and different kind of criteria, trying to build up where the ideal locations are. The contractor will also have, one of the questions within the tender is around the type of software and expertise they have to identify where the prime areas are, and that's even using base data of EV ownership, projected EV ownership. So using the information they're bringing and then our local knowledge, we hope bring the two of them together will then pinpoint exactly where they should be going for the best locations. The other thing around some locations which will restrict slightly will be the cost of electrical connections, and the Northern Power Grid connection, the Northern Power Grid around the city and where there's congestion on that network. So while one area might be absolutely perfect on paper, if it's going to cost £20,000 to put a connection there that'll never ever get into profit, it might be easier to put it at the other end of the street or a street over where there's less congestion. They're all things that kind of come out as you kind of tease through the project.
Just to add to previous comments, I think it's important to note that the contract is not going to be too prescriptive. We want to work with the operator to understand the commercial realities of this offer, and so it is a collaborative approach we'll be taking forward on a site-by-site basis, and that touches on Councillor Diamond's comment about the revenue implications and why we are being awarded a concession fee, because of the project management of the Commission from our side in terms of determining those suitable locations on a case-by-case basis. I think another point worth picking up is with regard to why would an operator take on our currently loss-making charge points. And again, this is not something we're being prescriptive on in the contract. It'll be a negotiation we have with the successful provider. But I think the key point there is that, and which I alluded to in my presentation, is that this is a long-term investment. It'll only be further down the line that profits are start to be realised by these providers.
I think there's another point on that as well, that depending on who the successful contractor is, because you mentioned about will we sell electricity to the chargers, the bigger the operator, the better electricity contract they'll have in terms of cost of buying electricity and then being able to sell it on. There's also other things that around certain, I don't think we would want to sell it, because a lot of the risk and the cost, and particularly around our EV network at the moment, sits around that standing charge around those sites and the electrical connection. They've got more expensive over the last kind of 5 to 6 years due to changes of how they're put onto bills. So stuff that used to be in the daily and the usage charge has gone on to the standing charge, and that's something that ends up that we have a loss. So it might be that over the coming years, if we do retain them ourselves, the sites, or if someone takes them over, they might need to cut down the number to bring chargers together, so you have a larger number of chargers connected to one DNO connection.
Another point to pick up on, sorry for jumping around somewhat, is in relation to the viability of the scheme within the context of a potential trial of a cross-pavement charging initiative. I think both should be seen as complementary offers. We will not see Levi charges on every street in the city by any stretch of the imagination. And in that regard, it will not be, as I say, it will supplement the potential provision of cross-pavement channels in the future. And finally, I think to complete addressing all the points that were raised, the impact on the Streets Ahead contract. Now, that is one I can't answer personally, I'm afraid, and would have to get back to you in response to that, if that is okay, unless any of my colleagues in the room can answer that.
That might be one that we have to get back to you on specifically about the kind of legalities of the Streets Ahead contract, and no doubt we will do. Colleagues, are there any other questions or comments for officers? Councillor Horner.
Just very quickly to say, I think we also now need to recognise that electric cars are now not just to preserve the wealthy, that in fact, because electric cars have been around for a long time, the price of second-hand electric vehicles is now coming increasing within range of for want of a better word, ordinary people, if you pardon the expression. So that we do need to make this provision, because I think it is the charging question that is the one, when you talk to people about whether they're going to buy an EV, that is the biggest single question. Can I charge the car? Range anxiety, all those other things. So, but I think we should move away from the idea that we're talking about the owners of, you know, people who own vehicles that are 30, 40,000 quid. They're not now. You know, second-hand vehicles at 4 or 5 years old are coming down towards 10,000, and so that affordability will start to happen. And we need to provide for that.
Absolutely. Councillor Diamond.
Really sorry, I forgot to ask a question about parking enforcement. So how we're going to ensure that people aren't, are there going to be additional resources available to parking services in order to make sure that people aren't parking in all of these places? And on page 96, it said that we're a cluster member in South Yorkshire contract that we could deliver charges outside of Levi. How much funding is available of that? Is it a limited, like, because
there's no funding available for that. It's not an exclusive contract, so we can still deliver charges outside of Levi if we need to, if we want to. So if we're approached by other companies, whoever wins this contract doesn't have the city as their exclusive area.
But there's no funding for the council specifically?
No, not at the moment.
In terms of the question regarding parking enforcement, there is no proposed enforcement of Levi parking spaces planned as part of this rollout. It is subject to the public parking respectfully on the city streets, and to recognise the fact that where these charges are in place, EV cars should be prioritised for their sort of parking in those locations, but it's not going to be backed up by an enforcement exercise.
Thank you very much. Do I see any other colleague who wishes to make a contribution? I don't. So thank you very much for running us through this report today. So the report as a whole is on page 79 of the agenda pack, but the recommendations are on page 81 of the agenda pack. After our discussions and the answers that we have received, colleagues, are we all content with therefore approving the recommendations as outlined on page 81? I can see that colleagues are nodding. I don't think there's any abstentions, although Councillor Diamond.
Yeah, I think I've got concerns about this, and I'm disappointed that the government has ruled out public provision and funding that, because there's a potential that this is going to become very profitable, and we've got a history in this country of failed privatisations. So yeah, I think while I see the need for this, I'm not content with the approach of the government, so I think we'll abstain.
Okay, so let's therefore, for clarity, make sure that we get this recorded in terms of how people are voting. So, colleagues, can I ask people to put their hand up and indicate if they wish to support this proposal, this recommendation as outlined? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colleagues who wish to agree to this recommendation. Thank you. Any colleagues who wish to vote against the proposal? No. Any colleagues who wish to abstain? There's 2 colleagues who wish to abstain on this proposal when it comes to the South Yorkshire Collaborative procurement of the delivery of electric vehicle charging infrastructure in Sheffield. So thank you very much, colleagues. That therefore has been approved with 2 abstentions that we'll note in our minutes. And thank you very much, colleagues, our officers, for putting it together. That therefore moves us on to our next item today, which is item number 11. It's the Connecting Sheffield Castle Street project. It's on page 107 of our agenda pack. And Phil and John Shortland are going to be presenting it. Hopefully the cameras will pick up that they both have matching ties today as well. Phil and John, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Phil Jones, Senior Transport Planner with the projects team. I'm here today to present the consultation response to the Connecting Sheffield Castle Street project, which directly supports the opening of the Castle Site Park. As this committee is aware, it's a very exciting time where we as a council are working towards opening the new park, Revealed River Sheaf, on the site of the old castle markets. This project will deliver new signal control crossings at the junction of Waingate, Haymarket and Castle Street. This will provide safer, more accessible crossings for pedestrians, especially bus users and visitors to the park alongside the Castlegate area. It is also required for the servicing access to the park and the future development plots which surround it. Additionally, the Darnall Attercliffe to City Centre Active Travel project will be starting in early 2026, connecting into the award-winning Greater Green schemes at Exchange Place. This will connect up important routes such as the National Cycle Network, the Five Weirs Walk and the Upper Don Trail. The project before you today will bridge the strategic gap between these routes and provide a high-quality, safe connection into the city centre via Exchange Street and Castle Street. It will also fulfil planning conditions related to the park, including the pedestrian and cycle access from both Castlegate the Road and Waingate. It's important to say this project directly supports the city centre access and movement plan which has been approved here today, continuing to the vision of a more people-friendly city centre with prosperous routes. Feedback was received during that consultation highlighting the need for active travel, public realm and personal safety improvements in the Castlegate area. In terms of the non-statutory consultation, we have received strong support for the proposed interventions, with 87% supporting the improved footways, 74% improved supporting the crossings, 77% supported moving the taxi rank from Castle Street to Haymarket, 74% understood the need to remove the 2 street trees, given that 4 new highways trees will be planted elsewhere, and the new park will provide at least 60 trees in the immediate vicinity to the project. It is important to note we have received high levels of public support for our proposals as we discuss the traffic regulation order before you today, which would allow the taxi rank to be relocated. Concerns have also been highlighted from people with disabilities around the introduction of a new bus stop at the bottom of Snig Hill. The feedback here focused on gradients and increased walking distance from the relocated stop from Castle Street. We will continue to engage with the South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority around if we proceed with this change. The alternative would be for the relocated services to use the already existing stop at the top end of Snig Hill. The final point on the non-statutory consultation is that I'd like to thank the project team for their hard work, enabling us to get to this point and helping us to deliver a very positive outcome to the consultation. In terms of the statutory consultation response before you today, there has been 1 objection, 1 part objection and 2 neutral comments, alongside 2 supportive responses. The full objection to the proposal raised concerns that new moving traffic restrictions will be introduced. While the existing bus priority measures will remain in place, there are no new moving traffic restrictions that will be introduced by this order. A part objection was raised, supporting the concept of active travel improvements to the area, but objecting to the project's scope and boundary being limited to the Castle Street area. So the essential comment was they'd like to see more across the city centre and for more works to be carried out to the appropriate standards. A neutral comment was received expressing disappointment the project is unable to create additional blue badge parking within the project boundary. A further neutral comment was received by South Yorkshire Police in relation to the Snig Hill Police Station. A request was made to ensure sufficient access during construction works and as part of the project's overall design. And then finally, the two responses were received expressing support for the project. The recommendations before you today are to consider the objections to the proposed traffic regulation order, authorise the making of the traffic regulation order, and to inform all objectors accordingly.
Thank you very much, Phil, for taking us through that, but also the work that you've done outside this meeting to make sure that we're fully briefed about it. Colleagues, do I see anyone wishing to indicate, to make a contribution? Of course, Councillor Mercereau is a City Ward member as well, so no doubt will care very passionately and deeply about it.
Thank you. Yes, let me just find my notes on this, which have disappeared. Yeah. Thanks very much for the report. It's really useful to read it, and like Councillor Miskell said, I'm Ward Councillor for this area, so I'm very supportive of this scheme because of the improvements to the walking, wheeling and cycling infrastructure and the public realm in the area. It's a key part of the connecting Sheffield scheme to link up parts of the route, and this will be a really positive element of that. I'm also really looking forward to seeing the crossings in place and how they'll improve access to the transformation of the Castlegate and the old castle site. So this is already positive stuff. Also really good to hear about the potential improvements to lighting and, like I said before, additions to greenery. I noticed in the report, I just have a few small questions. 4.1.14, it mentions elements that have been amended following the consultation, so I'm just curious to know what they are. 4.2.4, only a tiny thing, but I think there's a typo in the dates there. I think they're incorrect. And 4.2.20, it's good to see the new trees going next to the showroom. I saw that the other day. Just a concern that a lot of the city centre trees get not watered often enough, and this is actually picked up by one of the respondents on page 163, so I'm concerned that there is somebody to water those. I'm not sure if that's going to be part of the Streets Ahead contract, but because they're new trees, they'll need watering where they are. It was useful to have the illustrations on pages 123 and 124, but it would have been useful to see where the new bus stop on Snig Hill was supposed to be. It isn't shown on the map, it's just next to the police station in the report, and that covers quite a stretch of Snig Hill. And I believe that there's been comments about the incline on Snig Hill being an issue for some disabled people, so I was curious to know whereabouts that is. All in all, really positive, thank you.
Thank you. Do I see any other colleague who wishes to speak? Councillor Diamond and then Councillor Shaw. Councillor Diamond.
Yeah, just really briefly, really support this, and just wanted to thank Phil for, I think, similar to the access and movement plan, the engagement with the access liaison group was really, really good, and been really attentive to the concerns they raised. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you, and Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Phil, for the report. I think this is it's a positive scheme. I mean, if you look at the kind of the map within the report of how the scheme basically connects existing schemes that the council has done already, and I mentioned the national cycle network earlier in the meeting. It helps basically improve those schemes, connects them together, and makes kind of getting around the city centre, or one side city centre to the other. A little bit easier, a little bit safer. I think the proposals within the scheme with regard to relocating like bus stops and the taxi rank, very sensible, very modest changes in the overall scheme of things. So I think this will be a very a positive scheme to take forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I'll just go to Councillor Riddler and then we'll go back for reflections. Councillor Riddler.
Thank you. Just a quick comment, because obviously all the improvements that are happening around this area are also related to the fantastic work that's going on around the Castle Park. And I know that so many people are going to be so excited to travel to there. You know, there's all the archaeology, the heritage, which is now going to be uncovered and is going to form such an important part of our regenerated city. So I think it's really great to see that, you know, that these different aspects are actually sort of joining up together on this work to improve access and movement. And that, you know, that this part of the city that's been for so long, you know, in decline and underinvested in, is really coming together now in this sort of once in a lifetime opportunity to really give us the city something to shout about. So that's just my comments on that. Thank you, Chair.
Very much. I'll just go to Phil and John for any reflections.
Cheers. Thank you for your comments. Yeah, I've just got a few responses to the questions. So in terms of the design amendments, partially as a result of what Councillor Diamond mentioned with our engagement with the Access Liaison Group. There were some discussions around the crossing facilities over the cycle tracks. So originally we had that design as a signal control crossing over the main carriageway, a small stagger, and then an uncontrolled crossing over the cycle track itself. Based on their comments and also discussions with Active Travel England and Simca colleagues, we've changed that now to a more direct alignment where there's a zebra of the cycle track. So it more follows closely the hierarchy of users where pedestrians have ultimate priority, and then cyclists have to wait for people who are waiting to use those facilities. So that was in terms of the design amendments. So I'll try and find where that typo was. The 4.220, the watering regime, it will be accrued by streets ahead. So there's going to be a watering regime as part of the maintenance contract and the commuted sums for the project. In terms of the stop on Snake Hill, why we didn't have that on the illustrations provided today, when going through the survey questions, we provided that directly in the question section. So when we mentioned we were talking about moving a stop from Castle Street at the western end, we did illustrate that with a map on the image, so I can provide that after the meeting if you'd like, just to help with that. We do also have some sketches where we're thinking for that. In terms of the gradients mentioned and accessibility, there's still ongoing discussions around that. So we're not sure if we're going to take that forward as a project requirement. The Simca Bus partnership is still supportive of that measure because, especially with the growth of franchising services, they've got in mind that it would be useful to have more stops within that area. So, but we still need to take those accessibility concerns back to them for more discussion. So that's something I can update about in the new year. Yeah, I think that was everything. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, do I see anyone else who wishes to indicate to speak? I don't see anyone else. So thank you very much, Phil, for taking us through this, both in the meeting and outside the meeting, and making sure that we are fully briefed as well. I think Councillor Riddler did point out why this project was really important, and it's really about the regeneration of Castlegate, isn't it? And just how much this will make it a better space to get people into and out of that new park, but also some of the fabulous changes that are going to be happening down there as we prepare for lots more people to be living there and lots more people also to be working there as well. So thank you very much. Colleagues, do I see that we are all content unanimously to approve this particular item? I can see across different political groupings that we're all nodding, and therefore we are content to approve that particular item and the recommendations that are on page 108 of your agenda pack. So thank you very much, Phil and John. That item has been approved. So item 12 is, say that again, sorry. Oh, absolutely. Colleagues, we're just going to take a quick 2-minute comfort break, and we're just going to pause the recording for people watching from at home. Good idea. Good idea. Welcome back to our meeting. We just had a very quick comfort break. Colleagues, we've got 2 more items to cover today. We've got 15 minutes according to kind of our constitutional arrangements for the meeting. So therefore, I'm just very quickly going to ask colleagues whether you're content with extending the guillotine by half an hour. That might not be necessary, but just to cover us. See, the colleagues seem to be nodding and are very happy with that. Our next item, therefore, on the agenda is item number 11, no, item number 12, which is the continued funding of the Mode Shift Stars project. It's on page 239 of the agenda pack, and Tracy Hendry is going to take us through it. Hi, Tracy. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for your time today. So I'm Tracy Hendry. I'm the Road Safety Manager in the City Transport Department. Mode Shift Stars is a national accreditation programme designed to promote active, sustainable travel. We work with primary schools to help them gain an accreditation which range from bronze, silver and gold. This helps the school implement travel plans that reduce car dependency and improve road safety. From this accreditation, school can then be considered for school streets. This report seeks approval to commission a new 2-year contract that will deliver the Mode Shift Stars programme in Sheffield. This is an opportunity for Sheffield to build on the outstanding achievements of the Mode Shift Stars programme in our schools. By commissioning a new 2-year contract, we can ensure the continued delivery of the nationally recognised Active Travel and Road Safety Initiative. Initiatives have already brought regional and national awards to Sheffield schools. Approval for this commission is essential to avoid any possible gaps in service when the current contract expires in March 2026. Delays risk disruptions in the momentum of our successful school engagement team and could undermine our progress on climate, health and road safety objectives. With new providers now in the market, a competitive tender will secure the best value and expertise for Sheffield, driving innovation and efficiency in programme delivery. The estimated annual investment is £250,000 per annum, and this will demonstrate our commitment to safer, sustainable travel and safer school journeys. I would like to add, we will ask the new provider to pay our outstanding staff, whose strong relationships with schools and readiness make them valuable assets. By supporting this recommendation, the committee will safeguard Sheffield's leadership in sustainable school travel and protect this vital service for children and families and reinforce our commitment to a greener, healthier and safer city. Thanks for your time today and welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Colleagues, any questions or comments? I can see Councillor Horner and then Councillor Diamond. Councillor Horner.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this because I think we all know as councillors, we all have issues around parking around schools, for instance. And so actually persuading people, and by the way, I do understand why people in the current climate worry about the safety of their children and want to pick their children up by car or whatever. But we have to work hard to persuade people of the advantages of walking and other forms of transport for getting to and from schools. Because as I say, almost every day we have complaints from people about parking, about dangerous parking around schools. And I'm surprised that we don't have more accidents around schools than we already have because of the problems of parking. So this is a really important scheme, and therefore we shouldn't just look at it as we're spending some money on this, because actually we spend an awful lot of money as a council, as a committee, putting in bollards, putting in WR lines, etc., etc. If we could remove the need for that, we would actually save some money in the long run, so I welcome this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Horner. Councillor Diamond?
Yeah, thanks very much for the report, and thank you for all the work that Sheffield schools have received. So Phillimore School, Stocksbridge and Ecclesall Primary. In terms of those awards, are they, do we have like data, and the other schools that Mode Shift Stars works with, do we have data that looks at, that measures the increase in active travel and if the modal shift there? And I just wondered if there's any prospects for expanding the work of Mode Shift Stars due to the new procurement to work with secondary schools as well, because that's another age group where you can really, you know, make changes in terms of going on into adulthood, more like towards more sustainable forms of transport.
Tracy, if you could share any reflections, that would be really appreciated.
Yeah, I would like to thank you for your support on this programme. I agree it's a very positive and worthwhile project. In terms of modal shift data, yeah, we have that data from the Mode Shift database. We do insights such as hands up, a review on how kids have shifted their modal decisions to and from school, and that's something that we can share quarterly, actually, if you'd like that going forward. And in terms of secondary schools, there is someone delivering in secondary schools at the minute who, when we are speaking with secondary schools, we've got a lot of contact with secondary schools, we refer them on to. That's something that I think it's Simca is leading on. But if there is any scope for us to expand into that area, we would definitely welcome it.
Thank you. Councillor Hogan.
Yeah, I mean, the motives, I think it's great, but I would worry about the amount of money, because it's only a finite amount of money we've got. If we're going to dilute it with secondary schools, I try to put a whole new programme in, because that would be a different stream and a different programme, I presume, with some of the stuff we'd want to do, because it wouldn't necessarily, it wouldn't be just replicating something and doing it to the bigger kids. It'd be a different way of encouraging people, children, young adults to go to and how they go to school. So, with this programme, what are we looking at further delivery at? What proportion are we at now, and what proportion do we hope to achieve with of schools, children, etc.?
Right, to reply. I've not got that information in terms of skills. It's around the 50 mark that we deliver to at the minute, and we offer it to every single school. At the minute we have 5 members of staff delivering, so we are limited to capacity, but that team is incredibly efficient and dedicated to their work. So every year we're looking to recruit more and then maintain those schools that do have the accreditation. So there's more work that goes into the initial getting the schools up to speed, getting them ready with their packs and their travel plans. Once that school is up to pace, then officers can help maintain but can then focus elsewhere. But we can get those projections to you as part of that quarterly report as well.
Just one more, which is with the Mode Shift Stars, I know they have to attain certain standards, that sort of thing. How often do we then go back to the schools, because obviously you change the senior leadership team, etc., etc. How often do you do any sort of auditing or any self-reporting that the schools have to do, anything like that? How do we know that because it's the case of anything in life, is you get something to a standard, and then how do we make sure that they're maintaining that standard?
So yeah, exactly. We do go back and we keep engaging with the schools. So for instance, Phillimore, who's won the national award a couple of years ago, we still engage with that school. We still work with that school. We don't just say, well, you've got gold, you've got a national accreditation, good luck. We keep that engagement up with them and make sure that they have what they need to maintain that, and if they've got any issues with the officers have created that sort of open communication with those stakeholders, so with those schools. So, yeah, we've got a very good rapport with those.
Thank you, Tracy. Anyone else wishes to make a contribution? Yeah, Councillor Misra.
Just a comment really in terms of cost. I mean, I'm really supportive of all the work that happens with motive stars, but in comparison, the average cost of somebody being killed on our roads, never mind the emotional and societal cost of that, is 2,400,000. So this is a drop in the ocean compared to that.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Mersrow makes a really important point there. I mean, I have seen some of the really joyous assemblies that take place in, 50% of primary schools in our city, which is an incredible number of them. The kids are incredibly engaged. Often, in fact, always, they're the ones who are driving forward the agenda in their schools, really pushing it forward. I guess as a secondary school teacher, it's something that I didn't know very much about because this is primarily focused on primary school. So I had to educate myself and go around and see some of these really wonderful events. I'm really delighted that we continue to fund these things. I think Councillor Mersrow makes a really important point about the opportunity cost here in not investing in motive stars. Not only will they have a detrimental impact on congestion, not only will it have a detrimental impact on poor air quality, but also we know that making that modal shift, encouraging people to move about our city differently, will improve people's life chances, will reduce the number of collisions and those people who are injured and unfortunately those people who will die on our roads. So it's really important early intervention. So Tracy, thank you very much for the work that you do, but also the team behind you as well. It's really appreciated. Colleagues, the recommendations that Tracy has put forward in the report are on page 241. From the discussion, from the debate that we've just had, it would seem that we would all be in agreement, but can I just ask whether colleagues are content with the recommendations for approval? I can see that colleagues are nodding and there's no abstentions, therefore that item has been carried. Tracy, thank you very much for bringing item 12 on the continued funding of motive stars as a project to us today. Now, we do have one other item to discuss. It's a really important item for Regeneration. It's item 13, but that does conclude all the transport items that we've had today. And I think as that's happening, it's probably important that we do acknowledge that this is probably John Shortland, who is Assistant Director of City Transport's last meeting. Now, John joined us, I think, in April of the year, which isn't an incredibly long time, but has actually made an incredible impact and contribution to both kind of our internal programmes as a city council, but also within the city as well. He's been out and spoke to countless different residents, and I've had a joy of seeing how he interacts with those residents. It's entirely how we as a city council should be interacting with people, engaging with residents. So, John, on behalf of this committee, I'd like to very much thank you for your contribution, for your service during this relatively short period of time, but I'd like to thank you on behalf of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Untouched.
Thank you very much, John. And of course, John joined us after a very successful career, I think, in Bedford, and did retire from that post and did step up to help us here in Sheffield. So we're incredibly privileged to have had him. Hopefully we can encourage him to also help us with various other different projects in the future as well, after he goes on a very long and well-deserved holiday. Councillor Horner.
Yeah, I just wanted to second that, Chair. I absolutely agree with what you said. His interaction with colleagues, as I referred to earlier, I'd asked a question of Simca, which they'd taken weeks to respond to, and responded to in the end, because John put his foot down and said, this is embarrassing, let's get on with it. And so he's been a great asset to the city, and I hope we can use his services in some capacity in the future.
Absolutely, and John turns no's into yeses, which is absolutely what people in the city want, so thank you so much. Alexi, was there anything that you wanted to say?
Yeah, just want to agree with Councillor Horner and Councillor Miskell. It's been a real pleasure working with you, John, and been sort of a blocker of any obstacles, and you've given really clear answers to and supported members as well. It's been really useful to have your insights, and hopefully we'll be able to work with you again in the future.
Thank you very much, Councillor Diamond, and thank you, John. It's really appreciated your service. Colleagues, that therefore takes us on to item 13, which is our update on city centre catalyst sites. It's on page 251 of the agenda pack. Alan Seasman and David Mason are going to be taking us through it, and apologies, Alan and David, you were at the end of the agenda and have had to wait throughout the meeting, so I'm very sorry about that.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, last item, we've got some slides to try and take you through on this, try and break it up a little bit. There's an update on the city centre catalyst sites. I'll do a quick introduction, then I'll talk through the station gateway, one of the catalyst sites, and then David will run through Furnace Hill and Neepsend and Morfoot. I hope I've got that order right. So the background to this is that we've been working on the catalyst sites for some time. We've been working closely with Homes England colleagues on doing this. It's an important part of the work that we did that comes out of the city centre strategic vision. It plays a big part in terms of what we're trying to achieve in delivering 20,000 new homes in the city centre. If you can flick on to the next slide, please, Amanda. There's a bit of debate about whether it's 3 or 4 catalyst sites. We started off with 3, and the 3 being Furnace Hill, Neepsend and Morfoot. We've put Furnace Hill and Neepsend together and added the station. So arguably it's still 3, but it could be 4. And there's a plan there that shows you the distribution of those. It comes out of a lot of work we did on the city centre in terms of identifying 27 different neighbourhoods and then priority locations and then catalyst sites within those locations. It's really important in terms of starting to get these sites away, and working closely with Homes England to do this should contribute to about 4,000 of that 20,000 home ambition. Talking about the first of those, I'll flick onto the yellow area, which is the area around the station gateway. This is a really important part of this, but it's slightly different to the other 2. It's targeted as a major regeneration scheme. It will develop underused sites around the station. You know, the 4th largest city in England, our major transport hub around the station. Development around it is pretty low, and we need to densify development around that, and it will also address issues such as traffic congestion, poor air quality, and sevens in terms of emerging neighbourhoods behind the station, connectivity for new neighbourhoods in the station to both beyond and across and through the station. It's an important project, this one, and differs slightly again in terms of the partnerships involved. We are a key player, as is Network Rail, as is South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority, as is Homes England as a landowner, and as is London and Continental Railways, who last week were rebranded as Platform 4, and they are essentially the property arm of the Department of Transport, so that's why they're involved. We've been working to sort of regenerate up to 4 hectares of brownfield land here. It'll deliver about 900 new homes, and will deliver approximately 170,000 square foot of commercial space. It'll be a transformed new gateway into the city centre. It'll provide improved travel and public realm experience, and will really set a statement for about what Sheffield wants to do as a city moving forward. There's some key components to achieving that in terms of improved station access, new traffic layouts, which will be trialled in January this year. We are working on developing proposals for a new active travel bridge to span across the station to connect the city centre to the space behind, and the space behind to the city centre. And there's been technical work going on around flood modelling. It's hoped that in progressing this, we are working on the basis that a business case for Homes England funding will come forward early in the new year, January, February, new year. And then once that business case is in place, we will move to procuring a developer to deliver initially 2 of those plots there. We want to have a comprehensive development there, and we'll bring back further decisions around how we achieve that comprehensiveness in the future. I think that's probably all I will say about that, and I'll hand over to Dave. I don't know whether you want to take questions on individual bits or to wait to the end.
It's a good question. I'm quite happy to be guided by colleagues on this. I can see that some colleagues do have questions specifically about the station. It might be just easier just to go through that side by side. Councillor Horner.
Yeah, thank you for this. I think it is important, the actual active travel connections. But one of the things we have to face in this scheme is the reality that in delivering this scheme, there will be no possibility in the future of any expansion of Sheffield Midland Station, because this is the only remaining land. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, because as people know, there was a motion in my name at council asking for the reopening of Sheffield Victoria. The reality is this station site now will be constrained on all sides. There is no possibility of the station being expanded to cope with future demand. We have to recognise that. But we do have to work very hard on improving the access to the station, because we have a railway station which doesn't have a bus station next to it. We must make it easier for people to get from the station, not only to behind the station, but also into the city itself, because otherwise it will become, if we're not careful, a station behind a very large building, which will not necessarily, at night, for instance, be that attractive. So we just have to be careful about what we're doing here.
Let's just take a few other questions or comments about Station Master Plan. Councillor Mersero.
Thank you. I'd raise about the short-term and long-term plans for bicycle access to the station, because currently the route is absolutely dreadful. It takes you directly into oncoming taxis. It's really badly signed, and then it dumps you into the ring road. Also, there's the issue of severance from Norfolk Park, especially when the station is closed. You haven't got the option of walking through or taking your bike through that way. I'm really disappointed that the plans for the new bridge have had to be shelved, as there isn't currently a safe route to Norfolk Park at night from the city centre. And the report mentions the existing bridge, but I wasn't even aware that this was accessible, so I wondered if that could be better signed than it is currently. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just add another one to that, if that's possible. You know, building on, I think, what Councillor Mersero said there, I care passionately about making sure that there's access across that railway line as well, connecting up those communities in the station and surrounding area, the cultural industries quarter, the wider city centre, and Norfolk Park and the extended area beyond there as well. Can you just reassure us that plan hasn't been shelved, has it? It's still very much something that we are looking to deliver.
It absolutely, sorry, I'll take these in reverse order if that's okay. So it absolutely hasn't been shelved. We are still working actively to look at a design of a bridge that would address those very concerns. From a regeneration perspective, the connectivity for those communities, the other side of the station back into the city centre, and access to South Street Park for an emerging new city centre population are really important regeneration objectives to us. The one thing that we haven't been able to do is include it as part of the Homes England business case, but we are still pursuing how we will fund that bridge, and the design for that bridge is still progressing. So we absolutely acknowledge all those points. They're the right points to try and address, and we're still trying to pursue that bit. And in current designs, the route for that bridge is safeguarded. So that is still something we're pursuing. So absolutely. In terms of improved access for cyclists, everything about this project really comes about making the access to and from the station work better. That doesn't necessarily mean that that will be as easy for some groups as others, but what we are trying to do is densify development around that station, because it is our major transport hub, and we should be promoting greater levels of development around major transport hubs. Coming onto your point, Councillor Hunter, Network Rail are absolutely involved in this in terms of the operational use and the future use of the station. They have their own set of plans that are emerging, but it doesn't affect this immediate environment. The land they need is further to the east. So it's part of the discussions we're on with it. We acknowledge the situation. having more people close by the station to work and live is part of making that station a more sustainable location.
Councillor Mercer, I think possibly wants to come back on that particular point.
Yeah, I'd just like to try to get to what the long-term plans are for bicycle access to and from the station, because I'm not clear on what that will be.
It's not currently planned in. What we're doing at the minute is trialling new arrangements in terms of improving where the situation is in terms of pick-up and drop-off and taxi access around the station. We've got a temporary traffic regulation order going in to see how that's been and how that will work. And the taxi companies have been consulted on that, and that is something that we're working through to see how that will arrange. The whole of the development, the whole of the master plan needs further work to come to a complete and final answer on that, but part of that will have to be how people get to it, and some of that may include how the new bridge works, where access for cycles comes from, whether it's on the same route as other vehicle traffic or a different location. That's detail that still needs working through.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Notwithstanding the comments from Alan in answer to people's questions so far, I'd like to second Ian's comments and questions and concerns about the site. I mean, when I arrived in Sheffield, well, over 20 years ago as a student, that derelict site greeted me as I got off the train and went off to university, and it's nice to see something finally being done with it, because it's not the best welcome to this city. I think whatever is done with it, something must be done, and I acknowledge that it's still in development. Something must be done about taxis, because and like pick up and drop off, because if all that land is just like built on for like housing and stuff, with no improvements to that provision, we lose an opportunity there for improving taxi pick up and drop off forever, and any other possible improvements to integration with like buses and so forth. So that must be kept at the forefront of people's minds, because we do want people to come to Sheffield, and if their destination is within the city centre, to walk or cycle or catch the city centre Connect bus to get to their destination. But many people might be going to the outskirts of the city and beyond, or other places where there isn't a bus route or whatever. So we need to make sure that those taxi connections are there and convenient. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shaw. Just go to reflections and then move on to Furness Hill and Eepsend, I think.
We are acutely aware of this. I think this is part of the reason for trialling these new arrangements now, to see how we can improve that. There needs to be better use made of existing facilities down there. There's an existing car park down there that can operate fantastically well for pick-up and drop-off, but isn't currently very well used for that purpose. I think some of this is about removing some of the confusion, putting better, easier, sort of understandable arrangements in place, and to make sure that a station in one of England's largest cities operates like a station in one of England's largest cities.
Absolutely. Let's move on to Furness Hill and Eepsend.
Afternoon all, Dave Mason from City Regeneration. Furness Hill and Eepsend, I was last here October 2024 regarding these sites, so new neighbourhoods with a capacity for up to 1,300 homes. And at the time, we'd already secured the £67 million of government funding to acquire and remediate sites down there. We'd just completed the development framework, which was a master planning document that was going to support the procurement of developer partners, and so during 2025 that's what's been happening. So Homes England have been leading on a process of competitive dialogue with a number of interested parties. That has now come to a close. There's a commercial standstill period that we're in now, but as of the new year, should be in a position to announce the preferred bidders for both Furness Hill and Neeps End, which is a really exciting point to be at. Also, during 2025, Homes England have been progressing the acquisition of some of the key sites down there, including our own land at Matthew Street at Furness Hill, and also the sites where Wicks and Westpac are currently located. There's another few sites that are also quite close to completion. So as we move into the new year, we should have around about 2/3 of the sites within public control, which would be really positive moving into the next stage of the relationship with the developer partners. So the plan is to announce those partners in January and then have them in contract with Homes England by March. Then we can get into the process of the detailed scheme design and look forward to coming back to committee and sharing the detail with yourselves. The site acquisitions will continue. Negotiations are ongoing, and assuming those are successful, we will have the sites ready, and we will be in a position with those partners, hopefully, to have planning applications going in 2027, and with an ambition to be on site on the first parts of the sites in 2028, and looking to have completions over the next 7 years or so following that. So that's Furness Hill and Neeps End. Shall I move on to Morfoot and then take questions on the pair? Or?
If you're happy to, that might be a good idea.
Okay, if we can move on to Morfoot then, please, Amanda. Thank you. So the process at Morfoot is following in the wake of Furness Hill and Neeps End, a similar process, whereby we have a business case being worked up for government funding alongside a development framework that provides the design guidance. And the latest version of that development framework is looking at capacity of around 1,600 homes across the Morfoot Catalyst site, which is based on a number of assumptions, the main one being that the Morfoot building is retained and refurbished for upwards of 300 new homes. In terms of the general feel of the neighbourhood, it would be more of a sort of a familiar city centre approach in terms of opportunities for density and significant height through the Catalyst site. During the last year, the progress we've made on that, the draft development framework has been drafted and is supporting the development of a funding business case. Homes England have, prior to funding being applied for and hopefully confirmed through that business case process, they've acquired the former Wicks site next to Morfoot, so that is now in their hands. In fact, that image that you can see there is taken from the draft development framework and shows an artist's impression of a scheme. That's from the viewpoint of someone stood within what is currently the former Wicks store, with you can see Morfoot in the background there. The major work that's been going on in the past few months relates to the business case and viability testing. Principally, that's around the existing building at Morfoot, unique, very unusual building, very large building. The challenge of coming up with a robust development appraisal is significant, and so in order to do that, alongside the consultants that are working with the project team, we've also worked with interested developers to do some soft market testing, and that's been a really enlightening and rewarding process in terms of giving us a much better idea of how the market might approach a potential refurbishment of the building, but also just in terms of the way that it's clearly caught the imagination of the developers that we've talked to, and some of the feedback that we've had, quite detailed in terms of looking at the different ideas that they have for the building and the wider area. It really gives us some encouragement that the market interest is very much there. So the next steps will be to take that development framework and viability work, bring it together into a business case to be submitted to government. The Furness Hill and Neepsend business case was for the Brownfield Infrastructure and Land Fund. It's anticipated that the Morford business case would be to the new National Housing Delivery Fund. There's still some process to be worked through around that, so the latest date that I've been given would be around March for business case submission. If that's approved, we then move on to site assembly. Discussions are ongoing with the major landowners in the area, all positive. Challenges, no doubt, but all positively engaging with us. And then beyond that, again, sometime next year, hoping to move into the procurement stage for a development partner. And one of the things we'll need to be doing is looking at the process we've just been through with Furness Hill and Neepsend, what worked well and what we could improve on for next time, and whether exactly the same process is going to be appropriate for Morford, or whether we need to make some slight changes to allow for the particular idiosyncrasies of this site. So that's all the housing-led catalyst sites. If there are any questions.
Thank you very much, David and Alan, for taking us through those final two catalyst sites, and Morford and Furness Hill and Neepsend. Colleagues, I've got Councillor Mercer. Councillor Mercer.
Thank you very much, David and Alan, for the interesting update. As ward councillor for these sites, I would state the real need to include a mix of housing sizes, so that there are more bigger sized housing for different sized households. At the moment in the city centre, there's a total oversupply of studios and one-bedroom apartments, which results in a big churn of people moving out of the area. So having a mix will make a much more stable community. Really pleased to hear about Lancer House in Kelham Island being retained, and it was really good to read about the active travel and environmental improvements that are outlined in 9.2 to 9.4. Also pleased to hear that Morford is being retained rather than demolished. Just a question from me: can access to the river for visitors and residents be part of the plans, as blue corridors are so important for well-being?
Just go and ask any other colleagues whether you've got any other questions. Don't go, Councillor Diamond.
Yep, again, thanks for the report. Really pleased as well, as we've said, that Morford's being retained. My dad used to work there, so it's got emotional attachment to that building. But and in terms of the embodied carbon, it's really important that we don't demolish it and build something else. I would just like to ask about the interaction with our plans for tram expansion and across city crossing. Sorry.
And the final question would be for me. I think you spotlighted how Morford might lend itself to, I guess, greater density / height, really. I guess throughout the country we've seen very understandable new safety regulations when it comes to taller buildings, which perhaps might have made some developers more reticent to make taller buildings in towns and cities across the country. How might that impact our plans for greater density and height, perhaps?
Right, thanks for that. First of all, the tenure and property mix. I think when we see the proposals when they're public in the new year, you'll hopefully be pleased with what you see there. There is I think on both Furness Hill and Neepsend a commitment to doing things differently in terms of what's come before in the city centre and providing for a wider range of people, which is very much in line with the development framework that came to committee back in 2024. And I think everybody, a range of prominent regeneration specialists have expressed an interest in those sites and bid and have all kind of gone down that route. At the Rivers Point, it's one of the sort of interesting, picked up in the climate implications in this report that all three of these catalyst sites, if we're calling it three, have the river running through them. And in the development framework that we produced for Furness Hill and Neepsend, that was one of the the big feature is actually a debate there, because you can make a conservation debate that point that says, well, historically, buildings have turned their back on the river, and if you were, you're in a conservation area, do you want to remain true to that, or do you want to open it up? And we went very much down the route of opening up, and that image on the Neepsend slide shows a new public space open adjacent to the River Dom, for example. So I think both in terms of not just public access, but also the roles that the rivers can play in terms of sustainable drainage, and but also dealing with being mindful of the issues with runoff, flooding, but also the opportunity to increase biodiversity as well, and restore that across all three sites. I think the river is going to be absolutely integral to what we can achieve. On the tram, so with Moorfoot accommodating a potential second city crossing for the tram network has been uppermost in the thinking around. Obviously, Moorfoot is already a hub of public transport and different modes of travel. So we have the draft development framework allows for that and creates space for it in an assumed route through the catalyst site. So that's very much covered off. On the height point, I don't know if Alan wants to add anything, but I think that's one of the points that I was thinking about when I was talking about the procurement approach to the Moorfoot site, whether there might be, rather than with Furness and the Neepsend, we've essentially said, here's your development framework, this is broadly what we want this place to be like, let's have your response to that. Is whether there might be a different way of doing things at Moorfoot, where we get a bit of earlier involvement from a developer to understand better what the market can realistically provide in the current market, but then also understanding that the current situation with the building safety regulator is unlikely to last forever in terms of the backlog. We don't want to be we don't want to be led by a process issue. We want to make sure that what we deliver is the best result for the city in the longer term, and so there might be a phasing approach there that allows us to deliver height not just in the right places but in the right order, in order to bring forward the scheme that best meets the needs. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
I'd just add to that, in terms of building safety regulation, it's been a real issue at Moorfoot that needed working through. I think it reflects what we're saying in terms of 1,600 units there. That probably reflects a little less height than we were first initially doing it, but Moorfoot still represents the place in the city where height is more appropriate, and we're still planning for some significant height there. Like you say, it's a market challenge as much as anything else, about viability than anything else. But we are working through those issues, and there still will be some significant height around that thing. Although we're also working on the concept of gentle density as well, in terms of trying to save same numbers, not necessarily with height, with different ways of working. Ultimately, it will be what the market responds with at the end of the day. I think that, just to reiterate what Dave said there, is that in terms of how the framework's been developed in terms of tenure and types of homes, all of this work has gone hand in hand. Coming out of the city centre strategic vision has been done with a real eye on what we're saying through the local plan and the powers that we've got in the local plan to try and say what we want from developments, and to be able to resist sort of developments that are just one-bedroom studios. And that is exactly what we will do here. We will be looking for a mix of range of types of dwellings.
Well, thank you very much, Alan and David. Colleagues, our guillotine is probably just about to fall in terms of the available time for us. So are we content to move to considering the recommendations? I can see colleagues are nodding. So that therefore takes us to the recommendations, which are on page 253 of the agenda pack. Colleagues, can I ask whether we are all agreed to approve that particular item? I'm seeing that colleagues are content, so that therefore has been approved, those recommendations. Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, Alan. And that therefore concludes our meeting today, the last meeting of the calendar year for 2025. Hope everyone has a great Christmas and a wonderful New Year. Thank you so much.